Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me here. We are talking about a pretty serious topic today. A lot of information's come out in regards to the allegations against Neil Gaiman, who is a former Scientologist, and he was raised in Scientology from the age of 5 years old. I started to write about this topic on my Substack because I'd read the article which came out, and we'll get into that in a sec. And I just wanted to sort of like see what I could bring into the conversation based on my experience of being a child growing up in Scientology. The article that was written about him was very extensive, very detailed, and it went into his childhood, and there was a lot of background and historical information there. And I just thought that the writer Lila Shapiro did an incredible job. And yeah, I sort of, that sort of prompted me to want to write about it. So I wrote about it on my Substack, and I was going to just write one article, and then I sort of just kept writing and researching and adding more and going back. And so I wanted to talk about that today because I think there's a very important conversation to be had here about what Hubbard's techniques can do to a child. And thank you for coming along for this journey as we kind of dive in a bit deeper into that topic. And along for the ride with me is my dear friend T. She's in Perth in Australia. And here she is. Welcome, T.
Hi, everyone. How you doing? Yep. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being involved in this today. I really appreciate all the effort and energy that you put into looking into Scientology and talking about it on your own channel, Perth Scientology Audit. And along with us today, we've got a few other of our peeps from Australia, from around Australia. Yeah, so wanted to welcome a few of them. So we have got Mad Drop Bear. G'day. Yeah, and my amazing Maud is here as well. So I just wanted to say shout out to her. Hello, Amanda. Thank you so much for looking after us. We really appreciate it. And Afila is here as well. So we are just,
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
It's really weird. It's not coming up on my YouTube for some strange reason. It says it's connected, but it's not showing up. Yeah, I don't know.
It should be. If anyone could check for us and put a comment in the chat for us, let us know. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to, and again, Amanda looking after us so well, did already pop this in the comment earlier, but, and that's just to, understand that some of the topics might be difficult. And, if you need to step away at any time, please do so. What I'm not going to do today is I'm not going to dive into the details of the sexual assault allegations, although we will touch on them. I have got a quote in one of the articles about that. And so there is some of that content there. What I'm mainly going to be focusing on is the child experience of Neil Gaiman. And we're going to we'll kind of sidewind into some other topics along the way, but I'm not intending for this to be like a heavily detailed in terms of graphic sexual assault details, but there is going to be some of that content in there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I was doing a deep dive. I think I was doing a bit of a deep dive as well, and I was looking at more of the Scientology, his family, his extended family, and what he went through as a child and how it may have affected him in adulthood as well. But I think you've done a bit more of a deep dive than me into a lot more. You probably have more resources than me with the Scientology stuff. So I'm interested to see what you've got.
Well, I might not. I may and I may not. But I was curious, T, what was it that intrigued you or interested you in the child Scientology side of it? Because I know that for me, that's what gripped me, or I guess took me further into further research and looking at different things.
Yeah, I just, more knowledge and more gathering of kind of evidence and awareness of how the so-called tech affects children and their mental development, you know. I think it's really important for it to be exposed and spoken about. You know, people think, oh, you know, they're kids and they get over it. And this is a very young child that's started studying Scientology at a very young age. And of course, it would have had a huge influence on the way he turned out, you know, as well as, well, we'll talk about it anyway, all the everything around him, the environment and everything, you know. Yeah, and there's not much information really on his adult, like after he apparently left, you know, so we don't really know, has he had therapy, has he, you know. Yeah, so I think it's an important conversation, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And yeah, so we can get straight into that. So I will just touch on, okay, this one. So just so that you can see, okay, this is the first article that I wrote. And I wasn't sure quite how to do this because I don't know if it's beneficial to like read through the whole thing. And it's a 5-part series. So I don't know, T, do you want me to just sort of like pick out various points, or do you want me to just read through?
However you want to do it. I mean, if Villa says she doesn't know the whole story, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it depends. How long is it? Right, whatever you're comfortable with. Yeah.
All right, well, we'll just see how we go, and we'll just take it as we go. If I need to skip ahead, I'll skip ahead. But I just want to show you, first of all, as well. So this is the original article, and it's very extensive. It's very detailed. It's called "There Is No Safe Word," is the main title, by Lila Shapiro, and it's for New York Magazine, but it's on this Vulture page, and under Vulture, and it is very, very detailed. And as I said, it goes into like sort of the history of Scientology at the time, his parents' involvement and how they got in, and yeah, the extent of their involvement and commitment. So this is the article here, just so that you see that. And so what I thought was, I'd read the article and I just was sort of thinking about like what was my takeaways from it, and then just I knew I wanted to focus on consent and like, what is that in Scientology? Is that something that is understood in Scientology? Is something that's talked about, and sort of just tackle that, that area of consent,
and boundaries, like, you know,
exactly, absolutely. So
the whole view on the world. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, just the whole.
No, go for it.
I guess the way a child is brought up and how they are taught. I mean, I wasn't brought up learning very many boundaries either, and but you know, this is extreme control. You know, and it's I don't have the words for it. It's making me feel cold. Sorry when I think about it. Yeah. It's
all right, and T, you as well. If you feel at any time like you need to step out of this live, like that's totally fine too. So it's whatever, like, you know, we'll go as far as you're comfortable with.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm usually good at compartmentalizing. You know.
What I wanted to say as well is, obviously I don't intend for this to cover the full spectrum of what consent is or what it is in Scientology either. This is just the various thoughts that I had on it and the things that I kind of wanted to pull out to maybe, you know, what did I have to offer to add to this topic, I guess was more what it was about. So I'll get straight into this. On the 13th of January, 2025, an article titled "There Is No Safe Word," written by Lila Shapiro, which detailed several accounts of sexual assault allegations against Neil Gaiman, was published by New York Magazine. The content was harrowing and horrifying, the details of which, coupled with the information about Neil Gaiman's childhood in Scientology, felt like I was staring down the Felt like I was staring down both barrels of a double-barrel shotgun. The two most important causes that are nearest to my heart, and the two things which I have consistently spoken about for years: the damage to children in Scientology and sexual assault. And also as well, because that topic of consent it's in both of those topics. Like when we say kids can't consent, it was just like the whole subject matter of what I had been focusing on, kind of just came together in one thing.
Yeah.
I've wanted to allow myself time to process the horror, the grief, and the brutal reality that we'd been confronted with through the information contained in and resulting from this New York Magazine article, to take the time to consider how to form the words to accurately convey my deep sorrow for a child who began experiencing Scientology at 5 years old, and my abhorrence for the adult who chose to violate and abuse people. I do not believe that any words that I put together can fully convey the depth of either of these two present issues, but I believe it is important and necessary to draw attention to what I feel should be an urgent call to action on what is currently happening to children around the world. Speaking out. Allegations against Neil Gaiman were originally brought to light by a podcast series published from July to August 2024 by Tortoise Media, which began on the foundation of two women detailing their experiences and finished on the story of a fifth woman. Though Neil Gaiman denied committing such acts without consent, more women have since come forward. Before I continue on, I wish to send out my heartfelt appreciation to each person who has brought these issues out into the sunlight, the survivors who have bravely told the world of their experiences, and those who have supported and published their stories. There is no safe word. The New York Magazine article by Lila Shapiro highlights a pattern of coercion, dominance, power, abuse, and rape. It makes clear that around Neil Gaiman, there were no common sense boundaries, and this was particularly obvious in the accounts told by Scarlett Pavlovich, a woman who was a nanny to Gaiman and Amanda Palmer's young son. Gaiman made little to no effort to shield the child from his sexual advances and activities despite objections from Pavlovich. Also included in the extensive article is mention of Gaiman's childhood in Scientology, a system built on Hubbard's words which, by my own experience, has no regard for protective boundaries for children. In fact, it is one which does not recognize that a child is a child. One statement among the many things that Hubbard said of children is, children are not a special category of human being. Denial of the natural vulnerability of children and failure to recognize their special needs for protection is present throughout 3 decades of Hubbard's writings and is continued practice by Scientology parents today. In the article, Pavlovich spoke about the difficulty of accepting the reality of rape, beginning from the first incident. And this is a quote from the article. "You're not thinking in a linear or logical fashion," Pavlovich says, "but the mind is trying to process it in ways that it can. Whatever had happened in the bath, she'd been through worse and survived, she thought. And Gaiman and Palmer were offering her the possibility of a shared future." Dr. Barbara Ziv, a forensic psychiatrist and renowned sexual trauma expert, has testified in several high-profile cases to provide information about such things as victim responses to sexual violence and the impact of sexual violence on victims during and after being assaulted. In April 2023, during the trial of another celebrity Scientologist who had been accused of multiple rapes, Danny Masterson, Ziv provided blind testimony as an expert witness to address common rape myths. This took place during the second trial of Masterson, which resulted in his conviction. On the stand, Ziv said that most incidents of sexual assault are not done by a stranger, but actually more commonly, 85%, are done by someone known to the victim. She explained that when someone is being attacked by someone they know, it can be very confusing for them. It takes them longer to figure out what's going on. And in most cases, women use much more subtle forms of refusal. Rather than scream, fight back, or physically resist, victims can also hold common misconceptions about rape, so when it happens to them, they can experience great difficulty in labeling it as rape or sexual assault. Ziv said that it is not uncommon for uncommon for victims to have contact with a perpetrator following sexual assault, saying that even a relationship can develop, which is very counterintuitive. She emphasized the difficulty of accepting the reality of such an experience by saying no one wants to be a victim of rape. The Boy at the End of the Lane. In the article, there is no safe word. Lila Shapiro writes, after they'd been together for a few years, Palmer, which is his wife, or they're going through a divorce, Palmer began asking Gaiman to tell her more about his childhood in Scientology, but he seemed unable to string more than a few sentences together. When she encouraged him to continue, he would curl up on the bed into a fetal position and cry. He refused to see a therapist. Instead, he sat down to write a short story that kept getting longer until it had turned into a novel. Although the child at the center of the story in many ways remains opaque, Palmer felt he had never been so open. He dedicated the book, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, to Amanda, who wanted to know. His parents' participation in Scientology began when Gaiman was just 5 years old. By age 7, he was held as an example to the world of the good work that Hubbard's techniques could do for a child when his father, David Gaiman, who had quickly risen to a high position in the organization and was responsible for public relations, propped him up as a poster child for Scientology in a British radio interview recorded in 1968. The End of the Lane seems to reference the Scientology landmark and Hubbard home of St. Hill in East Grinstead, West Sussex, near which Gaiman's family had come to reside. This part of the story is where I stare gut-wrenchingly into the belly of a brutal system which is designed to destroy children. And this is where the two topics of 1, a childhood in Scientology, and 2, adult sexual assault, have their commonality, the absence of consent. And then I just say that I've decided to break it down into further parts, and yeah, so that was the first article that I wrote, and then I sort of went on from there. But do you have any thoughts or anything you want to add to that?
Well, firstly, it's beautifully written and you're very talented. Yeah. It's just shocking to me how a child can be studying. I mean, he was an avid reader. He was reading, he said his favorite book was, funnily enough, Alice in Wonderland at the age of 4. So he was a very good reader already. But then to be studying Scientology, and then at the age of 7, was he a grade 1 auditor at the age of 7?
Grade 1 is not an auditor class. So grade 1 is you're receiving the practices on yourself by somebody else is delivering that to you. Yeah, is doing that practice on you. So grade 1, means that he had completed quite a bit of Hubbard's techniques by that stage, by 7 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did get the information for that, but I haven't saved it properly to my computer. But it was just I kind of found what you do in that training and what you have to learn about and stuff. And I'm just like, this is a 7-year-old child, and where was his childhood? What was he doing to be a child? You know? So it's absolutely heartbreaking, and the fact that his parents thought that this was okay. You know? It's just
absolutely.
It's heartbreaking and shocking, and it shouldn't be allowed. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on that note, here, let me pop this over to this. Oops. Which one do I want to share? I lost where I was. Okay, this one. And what I might do is I might clear those out just so I don't get confused again. Okay, so this is the next article is part 2, and I wanted to jump straight to that because this is where we get to the BBC radio interview, and I know that you wanted to actually go over that, like actually show what that was. So, or like we'll go into the content of that. I just put some little pieces through these articles, but what we will do is do this and show this. So this is just a still photo, and then but some audio recording is played, just a little piece of it, of the interview with Neil Gaiman when he was a 7-year-old child. And basically at the time he had his father, who was a spokesperson of Scientology, was also part of the Guardian's office, but we'll get into that a bit later on, had put Neil Gaiman as a 7-year-old child on the BBC radio. And this is covered in that article as well, that Lila Shapiro article, where she actually says in there that they were trying to dispel the idea that Scientology or Hubbard's practices were bad for children, and we'll get into that further. A bit further on, but let's play a bit of this.
We've got a little bit of, I don't know if it'll be a treat for you, Neil, or not, but we've actually found a recording for you at the age of 7, believe it or not, and you do sound like a very, very intelligent 7-year-old. You were interviewed for a BBC radio programme, The World at Weekend, because at the time your father worked for the Church of Scientology in East
I remember
Grinstead.
I'd been thrown out of school.
Well, this...
Because my parents were Scientologists.
This is... Have you heard this since this was broadcast?
I haven't.
This is you at the age of 7.
Go for it.
It is an applied philosophy dealing with the study of knowledge. It helps you to handle quite a lot of problems.
But what problems do you have as a little boy that this helps you with?
Only one big problem.
What's that?
My friend Stephen.
Oh, I see. Is he a Scientologist?
Yes.
He is. But I mean, how does this grade that you've got, problems release, help you to deal with Stephen?
Well, you know, I've dealt every single problem except Stephen. It's one thing problems release can't only do handle.
So you still fight with Stephen?
It's more of a question he fights with me.
What kind of memories does that bring back?
Actually, what I was amazed by was the accent. There is that, mostly because when I was doing the audio recording of...
Okay, so... yeah, he then kind of goes off topic from there, but and yeah, doesn't really talk about much more than that. Yeah, what are your thoughts there? Because that voice is just so young.
I know, and I just think
really
that
difficult. Yeah,
it also shows. So it shows how delusional the parents are to think that that's going to be like good PR, you know, because he's kind of talking about. Yeah. He's supposed to be talking about what good it does for him and what he's learned and how to deal with problems and stuff. And it's just like to the outside world, it's like, what the hell, you know, like this is a kid. You shouldn't be having to worry about adult stuff or, you know, his friend Stephen, who they're probably arguing over something that it's natural. It's okay to have disagreements, and it's just being conditioned, isn't it? You know, as far as I see, I don't know. Yeah, it's just like Mad
totally.
Mad says it speaks to me of a child that's fully indoctrinated. Yeah, and it to me it seems like a 7-year-old who's brainwashed. Yeah, it's incredibly sad, and it shouldn't be allowed. I don't know. I'm not that good with words on the spot.
No, that's I think that's very accurate. And Stephen, turns out, was his childhood bully. And so here's this kid, Neil, at 7 years old. He's trying to figure out, and actually it turns out I think the kid's a bit older than him too. We'll get to the rest of the article. I think I've got that here somewhere. It's not the article, sorry, the actual, did I keep that up? Damn, I lost it. I'm gonna have to try and find it. But the rest of that interview. But anyways, so it turns out this child is someone who's bullying him, and you know, even though he has all this access to all this like Scientology, Hubbard, you know, technology that's supposed to be able to make him handle life, he can't deal with the thing that is very real and that is very much having an impact on him every day. Yeah. Because Neil as well, at this age, as he mentioned, he was kicked out of school. So they prohibited him from going to school at the local schools, which, you know, that should be illegal. That should have been illegal. and not allowed to happen. But he was very much ostracized from his peers, and he only had the children of other Scientologists to basically play with, like to have as playmates. And so I can imagine that would have been really difficult. And he was also in the midst of like all this, like, you know, Scientology was very much in the world view and in the UK view as well, as like, you know, it kind of in a way like it was like Neil's family and Scientology up against the world because of the way that they were being looked at and the way that they were being treated. And I just think that's a really heavy thing to be resting on the shoulders of a child. And that's why he was put on in that interview on radio for British radio. He literally had that kind of level of responsibility put on his shoulders of like, let's, you know, make the world believe that this is okay for children. And I just like, it's an incredible,
so much pressure
hard position to be in at that young.
Like so much pressure for a 7-year-old, like his little voice. It's just it's unreal.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this next article, basically I get into like what was happening at that time. So I mentioned the interview. He talks about problems release. And he says, "I've dealt with every single problem except Stephen. One thing problems release can't help me to handle."
What sort of problems would he have had to deal with? What does he mean? Like, what do you learn about
release? So that would be a particular like procedure, and I don't know what the questions are exactly, but it would basically be asking you questions over and over about something in relation to problems, and so it's basically supposed to give you this ability to handle problems, right?
Because that's what you want to do at 7 years old, isn't it? Instead of watching Saturday morning cartoons. You know?
I know. Yeah, awful. Okay, so the 1960s. So this interview took place in 1968. And this time period is a time when many families were traveling from around the world to England. They took up residences near Hubbard's home at St. Hill to study his words and subject themselves to his practices, placing themselves at the epicenter of the development of Scientology technology and the location of its worldwide headquarters. David and Sheila Gaiman's interest in pursuing Hubbard began in 1956 and stemmed from their enthusiasm for his book Dianetics. This places their entry into Hubbard's world at a time following his creation of Child Dianetics. As early as 1950, Hubbard was giving lectures on how to process children, and this work was compiled into an early publication in November 1950 and then formally published as a book in 1951 by the Hubbard Dianetics Foundation Incorporated. Child Dianetics describes the process of building up a child's access to their memories, working towards recalling prenatal incidents, and further towards future, more advanced processing techniques, which would carry them into recalling memories from past lives. This begins gradually by first having the child recall moments of pleasure, then leading the child towards painful memories, and having them describe each incident over and over. This is an excerpt from Child Dianetics. If a child, from the time he has been able to talk, has been taught to remember and to return to pleasure incidents, it can be predicted that he will be ready for formal auditing at an early age. The criteria for starting formal auditing are that the child understand the significance of prenatal life, know about birth, and realize that repeated running of a painful experience will dispose of it forever. The practitioner is instructed to re-educate them, to encourage them towards being accepting of the processes, to groom them into using play and childlike speech imitation. So this is all in the book Child Dianetics. I actually went back and found it and read through it, and this is literally is what it is saying to do. It's like the instructions to the person that is doing this on a child. And what this does is it is ever pushing them towards earlier painful incidents, ever breaking down their resistance and circumventing their protests. There is no consent here. It is a prying open and a repetition of violations against the child mind, psychological assaults which a child is not capable of withstanding.
Yeah.
In 1958, 2 years after Gaiman's parents had become enthralled by Hubbard, the book Have You Lived Before This Life was published, which contains case histories, detailed stories of lives lived previously, recalled while undergoing Hubbard's hypnotic techniques. The case histories include the claims of people identifying themselves as soldiers or peasants from many years ago, and even having existed in other worlds, such as one recollection of being trapped in a doll's body, a robot body, and at some stage being laser beamed to death. These claimed recollections include accounts of torture, murder, and rape, believed to have been experienced in past lives. And T, you and I, along with Laura, covered this book, and that was a pretty incredible live of like
it's a horrendous book. It's an absolutely horrendous book for a child to be reading. Like, they would give you nightmares, you know? Oh, it's just unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, even the cover of the bloody book there for a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old, would he be reading it?
The cover, so the cover's changed over the years. This is a later edition. Like, this is the cover of the book that I saw when I was a kid. So I put here, as a child also raised in Scientology, I read this book in 1996, 11 years old. There was this one, and there was also another one that had like a woman on the front, and it was one of those was either of those two was the first time I read it, but I would have read it like a few times, a couple of times at least, as a kid. There's earlier prints of it that look different to this. You know, but
there was one with like an Aztec like statue face thing with a mouth like that.
That's right, really like a mask, like an ancient mask. Yeah,
so strange.
Yeah, totally. Like many other Scientology families in the 1960s, the Gaimans' eagerness to involve themselves more deeply in Hubbard's movement prompted their relocation to the small country town of East Grinstead in 1965 to a house about a mile away from Hubbard's home at St. Hill. Hubbard's adherents believed that he was making groundbreaking discoveries on man as a spiritual being who had lived trillions of years, which was celebrated with fervor and gushed about. It was an era of open revelment in past life stories imagined through hypnotic reverie, retold as fact. And this is from the interview that Neil Gaiman did when he was 7. So the interviewer is Keith Graves. He asks, "What are engrams?" Neil Gaiman says, "Engrams are a mental image picture containing pain and unconsciousness. And what does this mean to you? Well, shall I tell you? I'll give you a demonstration." Now, this is like in his childlike voice, of course, because he's 7 years old, in that sweet voice that you heard earlier. And he goes into basically describing, like, going back to the incident. He talks about he was jumping off a television set, and he bumped his head, And what he's actually describing is, so engram, that word comes from Dianetics, the book Dianetics. So we already know that this child had been receiving Dianetics. Okay, so, and how old were you when this happened? Around 3 months ago. Oh, I see. How long have you been studying Scientology? I started at 5, now I'm 7. What Gaiman was describing is Hubbard's Dianetics process. I have no doubt that Gaiman was extensively subjected to these memory recall practices from as early as 5 years old at the beginning of his parents' enthusiastic uptake of Hubbard's methods, which would have eventually led him to recounting past lives. So in that earlier, where I was talking about child Dianetics and what the process is they're always like building this person towards, so when it's a child, they're building them towards going back further and going back further and going back further. They do talk about deliberately pointing them towards the prenatal, like, so in the womb experiences, and then pushing them beyond, when they believe that they're ready to, pushing that child then beyond that to past lives. So yeah. It is no wonder that fantastical stories are the subject of Gaiman's own writing, but what was the cost to his childhood? In the recent report published by New York Magazine, There Is No Safe Word, Lila Shapiro writes that when Amanda Palmer, Gaiman's wife, would encourage him to talk about his childhood in Scientology, he would curl up on the bed in a fetal position and cry. He eventually wrote a book which he dedicated to her, to Amanda, who wanted to know. The article states, throughout his career, Gaiman has written about terror from the point of view of a child. His most recent novel, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, tells the story of a quiet and bookish 7-year-old boy. Through various unfortunate events, he ends up with a hole in his heart that can never be healed, a doorway through which nightmares from distant realms enter our world. Which is like what you said, T, about like, what would that do to you? Just opening up a part of you that allows these nightmares to enter. And I think not only that, I think that was done through the practices, through the Hubbard practices, but I think it was also being around all these people who were, you know, just absolute zealots for it, talking about their own past lives. And at that time, you know, being like, oh, and I just discovered this. And I mean, they compiled these stories into a book. Like, they were very open about talking about past lives, very readily and very enthusiastically. So it's no doubt that at that young age, he was surrounded by these stories of people having lived these other lives, you know.
So, which makes it more real. I did actually study as much as I could. You know, I'm not a professional or anything, to try and actually see what the child Dianetics and the and that book, you know, and everything, how it would actually psychologically affect a child. And I took some I made some notes and stuff. So, I mean, it could have serious psychological consequences, emotional and psychological distress, you know, because you're constantly revisiting painful experiences, you know, and it's under coercion, you know. It really could lead to emotional trauma rather than healing. I don't understand how that can be healing at all. You know, and then having to dispose of these painful experiences by reliving them over and over. Like, it's just so backwards to me, who I haven't grown up in Scientology, for people that have as a child. That's the normality, like, you know, and I just, it's insane. And as well as, like, you know, looking into sort of prenatal memories and past lives and stuff, it's going to cause confusion between what's reality and what's imagination, you know.
Totally.
You know, for a child, and your brain's developing. It's like 5, 6, 7 years old. It's just, I can't put into words how. I didn't think I was going to get upset, but now I am. Like, it's giving me like goosebumps, you know. It's. I just look at my child and, it's. Whew. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting a bit.
It's incredibly invasive. No, I hear you, and I totally understand. And this is what gripped me in this story is, like, this child clearly, just from that one piece of evidence that we have, which is the BBC interview, we know that this child must have received extensively these Hubbard techniques, and you know, and that he did experience these recall techniques and of described child Dianetics, and I kid you not, in the text of child Dianetics, it's literally like when you say coercion, it's literally is that. It's like, if the child is resisting, then we do this, then we engage with him in we use a childlike voice, we try and imitate and and get him involved in play and make it playful, and you know, all the while they're going to be in this room with this child with the closed door and just have complete access to keep going and going and keep pushing this child. If they don't get to prenatal, you know, that session, it's going to happen in another session that comes up, right? Like, we're just going to keep going as long as the parents are, you know, continue to provide this child to these people. And it's incredibly damaging. I described it as psychological assaults because I absolutely believe that a child cannot withstand that kind of experience of, like, where it's relentless, and and it's an adult on a child. So there's absolutely no consent. A child cannot consent to experiencing these types of harm. And it is just absolutely incredible.
It's just going to increase anxiety and fear. And then I don't know about that age, but you're taught how to, the tone scale and all of that, how to just mask that completely, going against your natural feelings and stuff. But as well as like, the past life trauma and going through that, that's got to create some kind of like guilt in a child almost, that, they were doing things or experiencing things like before they were even born, like, I don't know how, I mean, I don't know how kids, I can't fathom it, as a 7-year-old. I mean, I remember.
The other thing it does,
I remember my child
T is oh, sorry, you go. Sorry, you go.
It's a little bit.
It was a little bit.
I'm just saying, like, the one time I was very happy in my life was when I was 7. I was lucky enough to have, like, my mum and dad were together, and I remember it was just me and my sister and my friends playing all the time, going out on our bikes, and I didn't have a care in the world. I didn't worry about, the bully. Yeah, there was the one we called the bad Stephen. And he lived in another neighborhood, and sometimes he'd come down and terrorize us. That was the only thing I was worried about. But to be worrying about what you did in a past life, what the actual fuck? Like, it's too much. It's so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming just reading about it, but experiencing it. I feel for any child or child survivors like yourself that have been through this. It's just, something needs to be done. It's that breaking down the boundaries as well, like boundaries of no,
100%. You're absolutely on point.
It really gets,
with all that. It's pretty horrific. And the other thing that it does in talking about these past lives, which are really like these false memories, it's just imagination that's then affirmed as it having had happened. And what it does is it really desensitizes a person towards rape, to the idea of rape, or even because they will talk about like torture incidents or murder, like when they murdered somebody, when someone murdered them, when they, all these things, and when they raped somebody and when someone raped them. If they are a man in this lifetime, they may imagine that they were a woman in the previous lifetime, and vice versa. And it really can desensitize and minimize these topics, because it's not real, because it's all just imagination. They can just, like, it's just stated like factually, and then this happened, but it actually never happened to them. So they don't actually, there's no emotional connection to the experience. The experience is being sorry, let me just say this. So they do have emotional and physical reactions when they are telling these stories in this session, but what happens is they tell it over and over. So they repeat it again and go over it again and go over it again, and every time we go over it, we're going to pick up whatever additional details we can find. What did I see, what did I hear, going over again and again and again. Is what I meant by that. Then desensitizes the incident of what they believe happened. And there is, in the Have You Lived Before This Life, there is details in there about there's details about the person who's receiving this, whatever I was gonna say, counseling. Like, how can it be counseling? It's not even counseling. Is like, is a totally different thing. So it's not even an accurate word for what we're describing. But
psychological torture is,
but they are, when they're like, quote, sort of reliving these incidents, they are not re-experiencing, but they are experiencing in present, like they might break out into sweat, or they might experience pain, and then the person who's doing this on them is like, okay, well, what's happening with your hand? And then they're like, oh, well, it's in a torture device, and oh, this is happening to me. And And anyway, so then, yeah, like going over it and going over it. And there's just like absolutely wild stories in there. So I have no doubt like that he was surrounded by these people. Like imagine being a 7-year-old child and all the adults around you are like stark raving mad, but you don't have a reference point. Your own parents
all you
are
know.
so deeply involved. Yeah. I included another quote from the article here in this one of Neil talking about, Neil talking about when he was a child. And this says, I was going back to the 7-year-old me and giving myself a peculiar kind of love that I didn't have. Sorry, I'm just gonna have a drink of water because my throat's getting itchy.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, I'll just I mean, the other thing, you know, if you're experiencing things that you're believing these things that didn't happen, it's going to affect your identity, you know. And you're that young, you're trying to figure out who you are, and you know, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out who I am, but you know, it's such a precious and vulnerable age, and it's just
absolutely.
Makes me feel sick. It really does.
Okay, so this is a quote that was attributed to Gaiman, which indicates that as a child he was in search of safety. And the quote is, I was going back to the 7-year-old me and giving myself, so I think he's describing with this book the ocean at the end of the lane. And what he was doing in this process was he was going back to the 7-year-old me and giving myself a peculiar kind of love that I didn't have. He told an interviewer in 2017, I never feel the past is dead or young Neil isn't around anymore. He's still there, hiding in a library somewhere, looking for a doorway that will lead him to somewhere safe where everything works. So I definitely get from that this sense of confusion, of being, you know, trying to figure things out and not having the stability and sense of safety, like even as a child, that he instinctually knew that he needed.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking. Constantly, I mean, I guess maybe a bit of paranoia there as well, that, you know, somewhere around the corner it's going to be okay, you know, searching for this all the time, when you're supposed to get that love and sense of being and home, you know, and love from your parents at that age. I just, I'm sorry, it's really, it's very disturbing.
I know. It's hard. Okay, so going on to okay. And I'm like, why is that not showing?
As adults as well, though, sorry, I just wanted to say, as adults, you know, and people who have gone through trauma and stuff, you get to this point where when you haven't had that as a child from your parents, you start looking at it, you're looking for it in other places, you know, and you can't get it from somewhere else. So you end up having to get it from yourself by healing your inner child. And, you know, it's just, sorry. it's a lot.
I totally, no, you're absolutely right. There's, you find in adulthood that there's a lot of work to do to heal that damage, and you have to figure it out for yourself. And, you know, I think for your relationships, and especially when you become a parent, for your children.
I still haven't figured out how to do it. This healing your inner child. At the moment, it's cakes and food at the moment, you know. But it's all a learning curve.
It is absolutely. Okay, so absence of consent, part 3. So this one is where I start getting into, as I mentioned in the previous article, there was all these people flooding to this like home of Hubbard, which was St. Hill Manor in the south of England in the countryside. You know, this town that used to be quite a sleepy town. is now having all these international visitors from all over the world coming to live there and stay there for like extended periods of time. So there was, okay, so let's start off here. So on the 25th of July, 1968, the Minister of Health, Mr. Kenneth Robinson, delivered an announcement in UK Parliament detailing actions to curb the growth of Scientology. He stated in part, "The government are satisfied, having reviewed all the available evidence, that Scientology is socially harmful. It alienates members of families from each other and attributes squalid and disgraceful motives to all those who oppose it. Its authoritarian principles and practice are a potential menace to the personality and well-being of those so deluded as to become its followers. Above all, its methods can be a serious danger to the health of those who submit to them. There is evidence that children are now being indoctrinated." The Minister of Health, Mr. Kenneth Robinson, referred to the Anderson Report, which was written by Kevin Victor Anderson in 1965 for the Board of Inquiry into Scientology for the state of Victoria in Australia, as a basis for the establishment of investigated harms. So I'm just going to show you, this is the address to the, when this was discussed to UK Parliament, in UK Parliament, with Mr. Kenneth Robinson. And so he basically gives like this speech, and then he lays out it says the following steps are being taken with immediate effect. And basically he establishes these new restrictions on the travelers who are coming in to, study under Hubbard and stuff like that. So there's going to be restrictions on travel.
Yeah, right,
They will not be admitted. So actually, they were going to be turning people away from the border, like that were coming in.
Wow, I've never read this. I didn't know this. Yeah, I just thought they were sort of chased out of the UK, and that's when he went on his bloody boat, Bloody hell, I didn't know. Yeah.
So even people who were already in the country, so foreign nationals who are already in the United Kingdom, for example, as visitors, will not be granted student status for the purposes of attending a Scientology establishment.
What year was this? Sorry, was this 68? Did you say?
1968, yeah. Work permits and employment vouchers will not be issued to foreign nationals or Commonwealth citizens, so people coming from Australia, for work at a Scientology establishment. Work permits already issued to foreign nationals for work at a Scientology establishment will not be extended. So they didn't want anyone coming into the UK who were Scientologists. They didn't want them staying there if they were Scientologists. They didn't want them working there. They didn't want them studying there. This was a pretty big deal. Now, I mentioned that, and this is the Minister of Health, and he had mentioned the Anderson Report. So he says here, this section here, okay. Since the Anderson Report on Scientology, published in 1965 in the state of Victoria, Australia, coupled with the evidence already available in this country, sufficiently established the general undesirability and potential dangers of the cult. Like literally in Parliament, he is calling them a cult. We took the view that there was little point in holding another inquiry. Although this warning received a good deal of public notice at the time, the practice, and so that was a couple of the evidence already available in this country. So they're talking about the inquiry, the Australian inquiry, or already garnered enough like interest and attention from the public. But although that warning was received, the practice of Scientology has continued and indeed expanded, and government departments, members of parliament, and local authorities have received numerous complaints about it. The government are satisfied, having reviewed all the available evidence, that Scientology is socially harmful. It alienates members of... Okay, and so... and then this line here, right? There is evidence that children are now being indoctrinated. Now, in the Anderson Report, which is really, really extensive, at the time that the inquiry, that investigation was done, it was an inquiry into Scientology in Victoria, Australia. At the time that that was done, they didn't have enough information on it being done on children. So this report is really, really extensive. It's really detailed. I actually have it here. And I mean, it's massive. It's over 200 pages.
I've read a lot of it. It's very interesting. Yeah.
It's very detailed. So at the time, and I forget which page it's on, but it does say that in Victoria, in their investigation, they found like maybe 10 or 15 kids that had were like in a school that had Scientology. Like, it was just not, it was so in its infancy that in 1965, or for what they could determine. Now, also, I mean, people might just not say that they were using Scientology on kids. Do you know what I mean? So they just couldn't find enough evidence to support or to be able to produce information about, how did it harm children. But they did say specifically that in this report that it's believed that the harms to adults would be the same as the harms to children. Wouldn't be any different to that.
I'd say it's even more harmful for children, because you're still developing, and kids are like little sponges and trusting of adults, and
and so T, now you understand. So that was, well, actually I'm going to get into a little bit more detail, but that was July 1968. David Gaiman put his son Neil Gaiman on in that interview, the BBC interview, 1 month later in August 1968. And it was to show that, oh, there's no harm, because this is where the public's attention was turning to. First, it was like, oh, we don't like that all these Scientologists are here, and like, what are they doing, and da-da-da. But that was about like adults. What are the adults doing? And that's obviously harmful. But then the attention was turned to like, oh, well, seems to be happening on kids too. And like, what does that mean? And what does that look like? And so David Gaiman puts his son on the BBC radio to basically be an example of like, this is a healthy childhood, which is insane.
Yeah. Do you think he was like, he would have been thoroughly prepped before that interview to be all like cheery and?
Well, for sure, because so David Gaiman was the public spokesperson for Scientology, for Hubbard. So, so, I mean, he would have been himself media trained and all that. And then, I mean, I imagine he would have done that on his child as well. Okay, so the other thing as well, T, and I couldn't find it. I had mentioned this to you before, but there was a Hubbard writing. It was a Hubbard order that was written, and I do have it on my computer somewhere, and I just didn't upload it, whatever. But I believe it was written in 1967, so a year before this whole thing with 7-year-old child Neil Gaiman takes place. Hubbard had written that. It's so awful to think about. But Hubbard had written that suppressives, like a suppressive person, can either be big or small. Like that, there are no children. I think he said actually specifically, there are no children in the Sea Org. Suppressives are either big or small. Like there was in fact children, but he wasn't recognizing them as children. Like we've seen footage. We know that at that particular time he actually had, children. And by 1960,
just all beings. You're just all beings.
Children were working in the Sea Organization. They were holding positions, and it didn't matter, what age, as long as they could hold a post, is what he also wrote about that. And so he was saying that a suppressive is a suppressive, no matter if they're big or small. Big beings get declared, or what did he say? Big basically like no matter what your age is, a child could be a suppressive person is basically what he was saying. So I just want you to kind of like bring that into the idea of like this 7-year-old child who at the time his father was working for the Guardian's office. The Guardian's office basically worked for Hubbard to kind of safeguard him from the public media and safeguard him from investigation and attacks from government and that sort of thing and inquiries and all that sort of
whitewash shit. Yeah,
that was their job. That was their role. Right. So it was like, so understand that if 7-year-old Neil went on the radio and he messed that up and he didn't do a good job of representing Scientology, he could be declared a suppressive person. And in fact, you found something which showed that we don't know, it doesn't date when he was declared, but we do know for sure, like, I mean, it is documented that his father, David Gaiman, was later declared a suppressive person. And he was let back in. But Neil Gaiman is also on that list. What's that?
I think his dad got declared and then he got back in as well, though, after he's declared, I think.
Well, I'm not sure. From what I believe so. I believe that is the case. And he also, he was also on the board of directors or on the board of trust or whatever it's called for the, I think there's a little local school there, which is like a
Greenfield,
school near St. Hill, Greenfields.
Yeah.
And he was on like the board, he was like a board member for that up until like the early 80s. So
he was there from it when it first started. I've got that in my notes as well. He was hang on a minute. I've got a lot of history. I might still do my.
Was he a founder of it? Yeah.
I don't know, but they were heavily involved in Narconon as well. The parents, they went to Russia and they were promoting the bloody radiation. You know, the book on radiation and stuff. In Russia, and,
all about radiation.
Yeah, and all that stuff. And they went to Kazakhstan. Hang on, I've got it here somewhere if you want me to mention it, or I might just, I don't know.
Well, before you go down that rabbit hole, let me finish up this one.
Sorry.
Historical stuff. So no, that's great. That's fantastic. Okay, so he mentioned this Anderson report. So the reason why, I mean, look, like the Anderson report, I believe is the best representation, the most extensively detailed, investigative piece of work that has been ever done on Hubbard's, or that I'm aware of, on Hubbard's techniques of Dianetics and Scientology and all that goes on. And it's incredible. And that was written in 1965. So, okay, let me just read on from here. So this is I did screenshot this piece out of the Anderson report. I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea about what Neil Gaiman as a young child was being exposed to, because as I said before, like, you had this, like, have you lived before this life? You had this Dianetics processing, you had children going through child Dianetics, but, and even though, like, there wasn't, the information about the children really represented in this report, what they observed on what it did to adults was harmful enough that they believed that these were dangerous practices. Sorry, the writer of the report is Kevin Victor Anderson. So what he was submitting was that for the Board of Inquiry was that, this is dangerous. So this is one piece of it. And so just also imagine, like, these adults are talking about these things openly amongst each other. There's children around, like, they don't care. Remember, there's just absolutely no understanding of boundaries or what's appropriate, or and you saw that as well when you saw in the article by Lila Shapiro, where he's like doing these sexual acts on the nanny, and he's doing it in front of the kid. Like, there's just, I'm just trying to give you, like, a sense of, like, this is what it's like. There is no idea or concept of, like, what you've said, boundaries. It just doesn't, like,
what's appropriate.
Okay, so, right. So this is from the Anderson report from 1965. In the evidence given by witnesses before the board and in the files examined were many examples of quite shocking mental depravity. It is both unnecessary and undesirable to give full details of all these cases. A few typical examples will suffice to indicate the general nature of this particular form of perversion. Thus, in cases where the auditor was a young female and the pre-clear a male, such comments as the following appear in the files. Sexy as hell. PC gets often the urge to move down to his sex organs. That means like his attention goes down to his penis. If he does that, he gets restimulated. PC has a bug about sending sexual beam at auditor. So I think that's like if you have a bug about something, it's like you have a button on it. Like you have you have your attention on it. PC has a bug about sending sexual beam at auditor. So it's like your sexual energy beam. PC disturbed because PC disturbed because he came to have auditing and now wants sexual intercourse. One female pre-clear, a widow, is recorded in 4 successive sessions as wanting to have sexual relations with her male auditor. In another case, a female pre-clear, audited by a male, was run for 13 to 14 hours, mainly on sex withholds. The auditing command being for part of the time, "What have you done that your mother would be ashamed to find out?" This pre-clears, imagine asking that question. What have you done that your mother would be ashamed to find out? This pre-clears file records that she went into grief over being father's lover.
Jesus Christ.
In 1919. So that's a past life. In a past life, so now in present time, she's crying because she was her father's lover back in 1919. Yeah, which incidentally was before the pre-clear was born, says the report. It was quite common, so amongst all these like case files that they reviewed, it was quite common for pre-clears in auditing to tell in great detail about their sexual experiences in past lives. These and they're calling them hallucinations. These hallucinations often related to the pre-clear's infidelity in an earlier existence, in which, not infrequently, the pre-clear was of the opposite sex to his or her sex in this lifetime. Acts of perversion by the pre-clear, both real and imagined, were readily discussed. One young man, oppressed by the thought of youthful acts of masturbation, long since abandoned, was regularly processed at about 6 monthly intervals on such earlier behavior. So this young man, who is no longer masturbating, but he used to do it when he was younger, it was now scheduling 6 monthly, like, I'll come in and we'll go over this again to discuss masturbation that he had done when he was younger.
Why?
One woman pre-clear recalled living on the island of Lesbos and considered that she was the original lesbian. So it's not Nora. Nora is not the original lesbian. This woman, back in the 60s, she recalled living on the island of Lesbos and considered that she was the original lesbian. She also believed that she was Karl Marx in a previous lifetime. And another pre-clear, a male being audited at the same time, considered that he was her wife when she was Karl Marx.
Oh, come on.
Do you see the insanity of it?
It's mental.
There was also, Okay, then there's this. There was also the case of one Scientologist who was worried because his wife was now living with another man who had been her husband in a previous lifetime.
Okay,
so, like,
it's baking my noodle, mate. Like, what the hell? I don't get it. I don't know what to say. It's
pretty
totally screwed up brains.
So imagine these are the adults that you're surrounded with.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So confusing.
Like, This is the mental state of the people around you. Like, they are so convinced of their previous lifetimes. They think that people that they know this lifetime were people back then in that other lifetime. And incidentally, someone fucked somebody and now you're going to be mad about it. It's like, it's so fucking crazy. And I'm telling you, this absolutely is the reality still to this day. And I mean, I've told you that story, T, about my mother telling me when I was 8 years old that she believed that I was a man she believed that in my last lifetime, I was a man that was in love with her. Imagine, oh God, imagine saying that to your child. Like, okay, I'm telling you, these parents, they're sick. And this sickness, like, rightly so, the Anderson report and this inquiry into Scientology that was done in Victoria recognized that this sickness, this depravity was being created by Hubbard's techniques. It actually says that in the report. So, but imagine, so if that's what is created in an adult, what does it create in a child from the age of 5 years old is when he started receiving these techniques on him. 5 years old. It's like, it's beyond, it's beyond, it's horrific.
Yeah.
So,
this is,
so that's just one screenshot. That's of a piece of a page of the Anderson report. Like that, this is how, and it's over 200 pages long, this report. It's like, it's absolutely, it's just horrific.
It's sickening, and it's the reason why Scientology, out of all the cults, is the hardest. It's supposed to be the hardest, and it takes the longest to be deprogrammed from. In some cases, you know, everyone's affected in different ways, you know. But it's supposed to be the longest and the hardest to deprogram from. It can take I guess if you're born in and stuff, for some people it can take a minimum of 14 or 15 years to be completely, you know, you've got to completely rewire all your neuro pathways by the sound, you know, like knowing what's right and wrong. You're listening to your body, your identity, like your boundaries, your sense of fear, like your morals, like just everything, you know. It's
everything.
Unreal.
You're absolutely correct. And especially when this happens in childhood, because you have no frame of reference, you have nothing to you know, contrast and compare, and like, you know what I mean, you don't have a former identity. This is becoming your identity. And there's hypnosis in here. So the hypnosis and the effects that it has on an adult, I mean, doing that on a child in their formative years, where it's just like, it's just, it's a lot. Okay, so the Anderson report, the 1965 Anderson report, also said, if there should be detected in this report a note of unrelieved denunciation of Scientology, it is because the evidence has shown its theories to be fantastic and impossible, its principles perverted and ill-founded, and its techniques debased and harmful. While making an appeal to the public as a worthy system whereby ability, intelligence, and personality may be improved, it employs techniques which further its real purpose of securing domination over and mental enslavement of its adherents. That is actually what it achieves, right?
Mental enslavement is a very good way to put it. Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
And this is 1965, when really, like, if you're talking about like the world of psychology was relatively underdeveloped in terms of what we know now in 2025. So it's pretty incredible that they were able to, you know, see these things how they are. I mean, what is scary is that we don't have more of these investigations. Like, why is this still going on? Like, it was proven as being harmful, the principles perverted, ill-founded, debased, all the rest of it, and yet this has been allowed. And it says the purpose of the techniques is to secure domination over a mental enslavement of its adherents. Like, and this is just allowed to keep going. It's like, it's just, anyways, it's incredible.
But they have so many, yeah, sorry, they
No.
they go through, they'll find any little loophole. They will, you know, I mean, I think one of the ways they got around it in Australia was, and the UK actually, was having one thing that makes a thing a religion, I think, is being married or whatever, you know, and they'll use that marriage ceremony to say, oh, well, we're a religion or whatever. And then like just little loopholes and creep.
Right, you're right, T. So in Australia, that's right. They found a loophole in the Family Law Act in Australia. They used that first, and then there was subsequent things. And then once they had success in Australia, they then were able to get success around the world, because they were able to quote what our court here in Australia said, you know, about them. And so it's like, it's incredible.
That was in WA as well.
Yeah,
nice state, yeah,
that's right. It was in WA.
Yeah, and in the UK, I believe it's not recognised as a religion, but certain orgs are places of worship or whatever, you know, or they have certain charitable.
Yeah, I think it's not.
Well, they run it out of Australia. That's another loophole thing, or a way to get round it is with COSRECI, and it's registered in bloody South Australia. All the operations are going out of that. So Aussies, listen up, Aussies. Yeah. We're burdening the tax. You know, we're carrying the tax burden of the operations in the UK. You know. Yeah. It's just. There's so much to it, and it's such an elaborate. It's just such an elaborate network over 70 years has been weaved, has been woven. You know. And it's a machine. It's highly dedicated people who are, like it says, like mental enslavement, like, and they just this like, you know, singular focus on expanding Scientology, and it's just like, oh, it's incredible. All right, so to finish up this quote from the Anderson report, it says, it involves the administration by persons without any training in medicine or psychology of quasi-psychological treatment, which is harmful medically, morally, and socially. And as I mentioned here, like about that, there was only little evidence about being done on children. It wasn't enough to support the investigation into that side of things. But they did say, the report notes that Scientology is potentially the same danger to children as it is to adults. Now, so that happened. They issued all these. Right, we touched on and how are we going for time? Are you okay for time? I've got as much time as you need, mate. Yeah.
Okay, all right, sweet.
Sorry, I just say it just pisses me off how they say they're under the same, you know, as adults, the same amount of abuse or whatever it was you said. Sorry, when it's not, you know. They're being forced, you know, these things are being forced on children to relive pain and all of that without consent, because kids can't consent, you know. Can't consent to it. It's not the same. It's not the same. And it's not the same in the law as well as, you know.
I agree completely. Absolutely. Okay,
there's so many good comments, Miriam. Sorry, there's so many good comments and stuff. We've got quite a few Aussies.
Okay, well, I want to show you.
I can't star them.
This. Okay, and you're like, oh, you want to get to them. Let me show you this video, because I want to sort of give some context to this article of the sort of vibe at this exact point in time. That, you know, so the British government, the Minister of Health, has issued these restrictions on Scientology, declared it as dangerous, it's harmful, warning the public, etc., but really taking in a further action to like prohibit the travel and all that sort of thing. There's a couple of videos that I just want to show you to give you context to that exact period of time. And actually, I want to finish up the article because let me just...
the questions will still be there, you know. No. It's all good.
Good. We'll jump back to that. But I basically wanted to just say, I just wanted to show you the vibe of what it was... what it was like around East Grinstead. And so to do that, I'm going to show you this.
And you're very good at putting it all together as well, Miriam, definitely.
Thank you. I put a bit of thought into it, and this is a very detailed live. So I don't know if I should apologize or not, but
no, love it. Absolutely love it. It needs to be done.
Appreciate that. Thanks, T, and thanks for being here with me. Okay, so let's play this.
And as far as the British government is concerned, St. Hill Manor is a haven for sinister cultists who prey on the unwary and bilk the gullible. Whatever it is, the manor is also world headquarters for Scientology, the brainchild of a one-time science fiction writer, L for Lafayette, Ron Hubbard, who has been barred from Britain and who is said by some to be living on a yacht now moored off Tunisia.
So, just, he said a bunch of things there, but basically, so he said that the government has decided that it's harmful, or whatever exact words he used. This is a video from 1968. This is immediately following, or very soon after, that announcement in Parliament about these restrictions. And Hubbard fled the country, but at first no one kind of like knew where he was. Media was very interested, like, where is he? Where is Hubbard? And the Scientologists were like, well, just kind of like not being, not saying where he was, obviously. Yeah. All right. So I'll play on that.
And what is Scientology? Good question. I put it to Jane Kember, who with David Gaiman, a one-time real estate agent, is a spokesman for the school. We address the...
Okay, so he said Jane Kember, which is this woman, and David Gaiman. So I'm going to guess on what he said. He said with David Gaiman, so I would assume that this man here is David Gaiman, Neil Gaiman's father. They are both him, at this time in 1968, they are both part of the Guardian's office. Now, Jane Kember, actually, some years later, in the late 70s, she is, I believe it's late 70s, and I think by the time, because there was quite a bit of time period that went by, because what happened is she got arrested, she got sentenced, because she was listed as part of the, in the grand jury as, well, she was arrested and sentenced for basically like compelling the actions of the Guardian's office agents that went and stole information from the government and all that in the U.S. She was based in the U.K. alongside David Gaiman, but she was issuing, what they found was in their raid, in the FBI raid, they found all these like telexes and all these written communications. Most of them were telexes in the evidence, and they were by her. So they're written by Jane Kember, authorizing and directing these actions of these other agents. So she was arrested. Also, David Gaiman is mentioned as well in that finding as an unindicted co-conspirator, because he's also on some of these, on at least one, I think maybe two of the written communications of directing these actions by the Guardian's office, even though they're based in the UK. They were based in the UK because St. Hill was Hubbard. The St. Hill Manor was Hubbard's home, and that's where he started the Guardian's office. So the leadership of the Guardian's office was really there in England, and then so Hubbard flees, and we'll get to that in a sec, but I just thought that was interesting. Jane Kember literally, so she also went, so she got sentenced, but she was still in England, and so then they had to go through the process of extraditing her and another Guardian's office person from England to the U.S. She attempted to appeal, so she had appeal trials, and then she actually was put in prison in the U.S. and served a sentence. So I thought that was pretty incredible. So that's Jane Kember that you can see here. So there's a lot of history here. I just thought that was super interesting.
The being, or the spirit, or the soul, whatever you wish to say, the person is. And we raise, or help that person to raise, their level of awareness spiritually. And the more aware the individual becomes of himself and of others and of the environment, the more able he is to handle the environment, himself and others.
The organization claims members in most Western countries, including Canada, and 16,000 in Britain alone. They pay anything from a few cents for literature written by Hubbard to hundreds of dollars for the right to attend classes at the Manor. To people who live near the Manor, Scientology is a pain in the neck.
I'm sure there's something sinister about it. For instance, some of the techniques they have of teaching.
Such as?
Well, for instance, on this driveway just down here, we hear this shouting, that's indoctrination, I suppose they call it, where these two people will sit on two chairs opposite one another, and a man or the woman will have a small object in his hand. He will pick this up. While he's doing so, he will shout in a very loud voice, "Stand up, sit down, thank you. Stand up, thank you. Sit down, thank you." This will sometimes go on for as much as 2 to 3 hours.
Do you really think that they're trying to take over the world?
Yes, I do.
I think the whole thing is just a confidence trick.
Businesses in nearby East Grinstead who balk at helping the Scientologists or who speak ill of them have been declared out of bounds. But for some citizens, the cult hits home in a more personal way. Mrs. Helen Waitman says it turned her son against her.
He simply announced that he was a Scientologist now and he wouldn't be living at home anymore. And he went.
Okay, so yeah, you get the idea there of
it's
kind of
insane.
Like the vibe.
Yeah, and such an old. I've seen that before, and it's such an old. It's a Canadian news article, I believe. And East Grinstead is actually not far away from where my family lives, and I was meant to go up there last year. Yeah, I was meant to go. I ended up. When I was there in, I think it was May, I was there 3 times last year, and I didn't get up to St. Hill. No one would come with me, because I was going to go on a tour, you know, and go around East Grinstead. And but I ended up protesting with Alex in London instead. I always cram too much in. But yeah, it's so weird seeing it in black and white, and all those buildings will still be there.
That's wild.
You know. Yeah, it's just
that's
even back then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible, because I want to show you something. Okay, so just back to that. And this part of the footage, right? Let me see where it is. I think it's earlier. Okay, that's the manor there. And then
I've driven past it.
When I was 17. Oh, here it is. Okay, because when I was 17, I can't tell which direction. I think this is coming down from the castle, looking down. And if that is the case, which I think it is, because I worked there, I was here for 6 months when I was 17 years old, from late 2001 to early 2002. And my office, so if I'm thinking that I'm looking at this right, my office was where I worked. Not my office, but the office that I worked in was down to the left, on the end to the left.
Yeah, right.
This is actually on the left. Again, if I have this right, because it was a while ago, but the staff training course rooms are on the left here, along here. And this is like, this area is like CLO, which is like the Continental Management, the administrative sort of body for Scientology. Behind this is the castle, which I don't know how much of the castle was there in 1968, but certainly the St. Hill Manor was like the main area at that time. But
do you remember why the castle was built? It was something to do with the land, or they weren't allowed to be there, but if they built a castle they were, or something stupid like that. Some kind of ancient law about castles, that they were allowed, something like that. Well, so they built the castle-y bit so that they wouldn't get kicked out, or something like that. I'll have to find out. But yeah, you know, again, going around those rules and finding a way and being above the law, and just it's they're relentless. Yeah. They're relentless. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm going over in October this year, so I will go there for sure.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get out of that. The next thing I wanted to show you. Okay, so just to keeping with. Sorry, what's that, T?
Oh no, just new name said it was something to do with planning. I'm like, yeah. Sorry, I'm trying not to look at the chat, but
Oh, good. Let me play this, and then we'll go to the chat. because
so we can do it at
this
the
is
end. It's your
also.
show,
No, I'd love to see what everyone's saying. I'm super interested. Okay, but I did see this. T, your hair. Oh, whoops! I clicked on the wrong one. Here we go. T, your hair looks amazing, curled and half up.
It's not. It's just like pinned back. But thank you.
Yeah, she is a beauty. I agree. I absolutely agree.
Thank you. What are you talking about?
Okay, so Kubi agrees with you. That's all they do. Yeah, find the loopholes. That I agree with that. Okay, so just in keeping with the vibe 1968, this video is also from. Here we go. Do this and.
Yes, Mad. Sorry, I just want to say, Mad, can you just send me your email in Facebook Messenger and I'll add you to the back of StreamYard, because it'd be awesome if you could start some comments, please. Thank you. I know you've said it to me multiple times.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you, Mad Drop Bear. We really do.
For it. Oh, I've got it. No, I've got it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Good. He puts that with me. He's good.
Just in keeping with 1968. Oh, okay. So, by the way, I won't segue off into that, but okay, just so keeping with like the vibe of 1968 and what was happening at that time. Yes. This is August. So remember, the UK government, the UK Parliament, the Minister of Health issues that in July, I think was it the 25th of July, 1968. By August 1968, let's have a look at what Hubbard was up to. Okay, so yeah, that's when he
so disgusting.
So there's some really famous interviews which were done at that time by this particular reporter, which is incredible work. And yeah, you can find those on YouTube.
Was it isn't that the Granada one? Was that the Granada one? It was the Granada. Yeah, I've got that on my channel. I think I've got the whole thing on there.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to see that.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
So everyone was sort of like looking for Hubbard, and then this reporter was pretty chuffed because he was able to.
Yeah, he found you.
Yeah.
That's where all the teeth pictures come from, isn't it? When he's talking with his little baby teeth and his black teeth and just general yuckiness. Yeah. Disgusting.
Yeah. Now, shout out to Mark Bunker on Xenu TV.
Yes,
he's like mastering, I guess is the word, old like archival videos, and there's a couple of really good ones. He did one. He put up one yesterday, which had Paulette Cooper when she gave her testimony. It was at a Clearwater court. In the 80s, and yeah, and that one's pretty incredible. And in that, Paulette Cooper talks about the fact that it was 1968 that she began to have interest in, like, hang on, what's going on with Scientology. That's when she began her research, was 1968. So this same year, all these sort of things happened.
Lots of things
at the same time. What had happened is that her friend had who appeared to be, healthy and well and fine, went into Scientology and then came out of it like a mental case, basically. And so she was like, he was delusional, like he was psychologically harmed. And that's where she went, hang on, what is this? And started researching and writing about it. And then that's when the Guardian's office was tasked with basically ruining her, utterly destroying her, which they tried to do over a period of years. And in that video, which is on Xenu TV, it's Mark Bunker's channel, go and have a look at it. She details that extensively. So I don't necessarily need to play it here, but I just thought that was interesting. Also, the fact that there's that tie-in with the Guardian's office, Neil Gaiman, Jane Kember, who then later on ends up going to jail, and these individuals are sort of like tied in this like international battle for Hubbard and Scientology. Like it's pretty interesting. Okay, so where did we get to? Do we want to have a look at? Yeah, let's do that. We'll have a look at some chat. We'll take a little intermission.
Okay.
Anyone need to have water break?
I don't know what can you see and which ones are mine and which ones are yours? I don't know. I
don't know how that works.
Well, thank you, Sharon Marks, for becoming a member.
And by the way, I should say Amanda Beaumont is who's modding. She is from New Zealand, and
yes.
and the time difference is different. So I don't know. It might have gotten too late for her over there, because I don't know if Amanda's still here with us. But oh yeah, she is. Oh, look. She's already. Look at her. She is just amazing. Amanda, what is the time in New Zealand where you are? What is the time for you? I'm just curious if it's getting super late there or
5 hours ahead of me, I think. So it should be 2 hours ahead of you. I'm guessing.
Okay. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. But we do appreciate everything that you do. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions or anything to discuss.
Hang on. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to sort Matt out in the back. I'm trying to sort the back out. It doesn't matter. It's all right.
Okay, you do that. Well, you can do that, and I'll just grab some of these.
Yeah, can you see the comments in mine as well? Can you see my comments too?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I would only see mine.
I don't know. I see both, because some of them have got like little paperclip things looking things. I don't know.
Okay. I suppose it doesn't really matter, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And T, you were saying that your childhood bully was also called Steven, and you said his name was Bad Steven. Yeah. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, we used to call him the Bad Steven. That's when I was like 6 and no, it was yeah, and no, but he was horrible, because obviously I grew up in Scotland, and you know, real deep snow and everything, and we have snowball fights, and then the Bad Steven would come along with his brother or whoever it was, and they'd put stones inside the snowballs and throw them at you. Like, it was horrible. No. It wasn't very nice. Yeah, we were all scared of him.
No, that's horrible. That's awful.
No, it was the right bastard. He was.
From Millie the Dandelion.
I just remember called him the Bad Steven, because I had a friend. My best friend was Stephen, another Stephen, who I'm actually friends with on Facebook to this day. Yeah, so he was the Bad Steven, so we didn't get them mixed up.
Okay.
Hello, Anne.
That makes sense. Say your name wrong. That's really sweet.
Yeah. Anne. Oh dear.
The Dandelion. Yeah. Hey, gorgeous girls, sending love. This shook me for covering it. Thank you. Yeah, we do agree it's a very important topic. First time here. Debbie S. Hi, everyone. First time here. Scientology abuse is bad enough for adults, but children, it's just so heartbreaking. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I met Debbie in Nora's chat earlier.
Yeah, Sharon Marks. This is shocking. No more kids. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, Sharon Marks said this is shocking. No more kids in Scientology. Yeah, absolutely.
Kerry, can I just get Kerry?
Toronto, Kim.
With Kerry, with Yorkshire puddings. Sorry, I don't know if you do it, but when you put them in the little pan things, right? Put them in the fridge for like an hour or half an hour. And when they cool down, and then put them in the oven, and it makes a massive difference. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. So that is the hot tip on Yorkshire puddings. I have not tried one yet. I would love to.
Oh my God.
They do look really good. Yeah,
listen,
I have seen YouTube videos of them.
You need to come over. So I've spoken to Liz Gale. I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent. I will keep it small. The next protest, right, is going to be at Perth Org on L. Ron Hubbard's birthday. And So I was being silly last year, and I didn't get down there. I sung a happy birthday song to Hubbard, but it was a piss-takey one. But Liz Gale said that's when she lost her brother, you know, and I just felt so incredibly awful. You know, it's all fun and games and stuff, but I really wanted to do something for her brother. I think it's important to keep these stories alive and the effects of what it does to children, you know, like we're talking about now. So I've spoken to Liz, and she's given it the okay. And so we're gonna have a protest outside Perth Org on the 13th of March. I don't know a time yet, but if there's any Perthies in here, please come on down. And if you do happen to come over, Miriam, I will make you some Yorkshire puddings. That's where I was going with that. But yeah. Anyway, more on that another time.
Do you know what? Yeah. I'll have to see if I can do that. Check my schedule. But that sounds like a beautiful thing.
Have
I'd love
Yorkshire
to be
pudding.
a part of it. Oh yeah. Oh, and you'll make some Yorkshire puddings. I cannot wait.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
Not to be confused with blood pudding, which was something that I tried when I was in. So my first time I had it was when I was in Scientology as a 17-year-old kid, and they had served it like where the staff live, which was, oh god, what was the name? Walsh Manor was the name of where the staff lived at the time, and I
went there last year.
They do for breakfast. Really, to Walsh Manor?
Yeah, I've got footage. I went there and I filmed it, and I spoke to someone. I don't know if she was Seal, but she was living in Welsh Manor and stuff. Yeah. I might start resharing some of my old videos because they need. Yeah. I spoke to her and I said, it says no entry down the road as well, but I just played dumb and I said, I'm just looking at historical manor houses. Is this one of the ones you can look around in? And she was like, no. And I put,
of course.
I put the foundations. I hid, the if you need help kind of thing. I printed out these things and I put one and I waterproofed them all. I put like clear tape all over it, and I hid one in a bush and like just around if anyone needed help, because I know that's where the Sea Org.
You never know.
Is. Yeah,
And do you know if that still is where they live? Like I don't.
I believe it is. Yeah, I do. I believe it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. The parents, they just hand over their own kids. Yep. Ophelia says it interferes with normal development in children. Yes, absolutely. And Mad Drop Bear said, from my experience, Scientology doesn't consider kids as children. They are ancient beings in small people bodies. So then this is true. Yeah, absolutely. Which is
and he's just come backstage and he's asking me. He doesn't know how to style comments, and neither do I. So if there's anyone,
and I don't know, I can't help you either.
Does Amanda, do you style comments for Miriam? How does he do it? If you do, does Amanda style comments for you?
Oh, there are 2 starred ones. Oh no, maybe that automatically because it's memberships. Oh,
no, that's mine.
Oh, that must be on your channel. I don't even have memberships. So okay, so ours must be combined then. That's good. Okay, so I'm gonna jump back to the comments a bit later, T, if that's all good. I'll finish up this one. So let's just take us back to here. Okay, so we got the state of affairs in how things were in 1968. In July 1968, the UK government imposed restrictions such as on the travel of Scientology for student visas, but also for employment and all sorts of things. In August 1968, 1 month later, Neil's father, David Gaiman, who was a prominent spokesperson for Scientology in the UK and was at the forefront of their responses. So he was interacting in the media and providing the Scientology responses to like the queries. He was vocal in the media about his rejection of the government's actions. He cited discrimination and challenged Kenneth Robinson, the Minister of Health, to produce evidence of his allegations against Scientology. That same month is when he put his 7-year-old son, Neil Gaiman, on BBC's radio's World at Weekend to represent the good health of Scientology's children. Today, the story of Neil Gaiman reveals the truth of this legacy. It is the horrors captured in the Anderson Report, the depths of depravity made clear in 1965, built into a child in early development, the very substance of those pages now fully realized in human form. So, yeah.
Can you take that comment down because it's distracting me?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I didn't realize it was still there. Okay. Did you have anything you wanted to add at all?
I I'm really, really sorry. I was so distracted. I wasn't really taking in what you said. I'm going to be honest. I've got Mad in the back trying to figure out the bloody stars, and
Mad, leave her alone. Stop harassing her.
No, but then he wrote
trying
a
to help
comment.
you. I know.
He wrote a comment, and then it came up twice, once under his name and once under my name. And I'm just like, what the frick is going on? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, don't worry about the starring. We'll figure it out another time. I'm sorry, it's too much.
Okay, that's all good. That's all good. We're working this out as we go.
It's up with me. Yeah, sorry. I will go. I will.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry. I am a knob.
That is all good. Okay, I just wanted to, if everybody's all okay, to maybe jump to the next one. Okay, so I did part 3. We are making good progress. I only have 2 more pieces left, guys. So
I feel very rude. Not listening to you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I don't mind.
It was just it was happening at the same time in 1968 that it was a spokesperson.
Yeah. So basically just framing that as that, after the government put out these restrictions on the travel for Scientologists,
basically. The UK,
that then it was very soon after, within 1 month later, so in August, that Neil Gaiman put his son on the radio show for that interview, which we've talked about, and as a representation of like this is this is the health of Scientology's children, when in fact like now we can recognize like that was incredibly harmful, and that the true legacy is represented in Neil Gaiman in human form of, I believe, of this depravity that was built in, that is talked about in the Anderson report. So just sort of like all those things kind of coming together. So this one is now, I'm going to go into, so I talk about Danny Masterson, Paul Haggis, Neil Gaiman, and if you guys want to read this article in further detail, you can just go to my Substack. But basically, I touch on the fact that there are these training routines in Scientology that that Paul Haggis, Neil Gaiman, and Danny Masterson all have in common, that they have each gone through those specific training drills in accordance with like where, because I looked at where like their achievement level was in levels of Scientology, and they would have each of them done these. And basically these, I break down what these drills are, but basically the end result is, just so I don't have to read all that, but basically the end result is to have basically correct control, is like what they call like good control over another person. It's to be able to override any objections or pushbacks or whatever, to make that person do what you want them to do. This is the final drill. I'll read this one. And this one involves the student moving the coach. So the coach is the person who's like training the student, obviously in that context, but it's just supposed to represent a Hubbard like so-called auditing session environment, where the coach is actually representing the person who's receiving the practices on them, and the student is like the practitioner. And so they're practicing this like so to practice maintaining control on the other person. So the drill is that one student, the student's moving the coach around the room with verbal commands. The coach resists, and the student must use a combination of smooth physical control and unspoken intention to make the coach obey. So he has to do this because these earlier drills are about like using the intention in your voice in like to channel into the person like obedience. The routine continues until the student can maintain exact intention despite resistance. despite resistance, can maintain exact intentions. So you're able to make that person do what you want to do, and you're going to persist in spite of them objecting to you. Okay? And you're going to use smooth physical control and unspoken intention to make the person obey. So it's really important. Now, when I was reading through Jane Doe 2's testimony in the second trial of Danny Masterson, what she was describing just like kind of leapt out to me as like, oh my God, this is that training drill. She said in her testimony, she said that he was very commanding. He said, you're coming over now, come over now. You're getting in the jacuzzi, you're putting on a bathing suit, and you're coming over right now. So that was in the earlier interactions with, through text messages. He was just very persistent.
Yeah, it's gross.
Demanding. Yeah.
Controlling, and that's what those TRs are. It's teaching you to control and to be the other person, to accept being controlled, to accept abuse,
100%.
Yeah.
So she goes on to say, now this is heading into the sexual assault incident. So if anybody wants to maybe just like pop this on pause for a bit, or if you don't want to
trigger warning.
Yeah. He's talking to me. He's saying, take off your clothes right now. And I was like, no, I was giggling, nervous. He said, take them off now or I'm going to take them off. Just really militant. He said, go inside and go get in the shower now. So this isn't her full testimony. I just like pulled some pieces of it just so that you can get an idea of like this, how he's being described. He said, go inside and go get in the shower now. Directives, commanding. It wasn't warm. It was like up to the shower now. He was saying, very kind of directing me, commanding, go get in my bed. The entire way through these interactions, Jane Doe 2 was resisting, and she was telling him she did not want him to take things any further. She was pleading with him to stop. I was afraid and he was not listening to me, and there's a panic when someone isn't listening and it's sexual. I'm just thinking to myself, like, how do I keep this from becoming, I don't know what could possibly happen. I wasn't thinking very clearly. I was just nervous and scared.
Yeah.
Dr. Barbara Ziv, who I had mentioned earlier in the earlier article, a renowned forensic psychiatrist who was called by the prosecution to provide blind testimony about counterintuitive victim behaviors, said in this trial with Danny Masterson, when someone is being attacked by someone they know, it can be very confusing for them. It takes them longer to figure out what's going on. And in most cases, women use much more subtle forms of refusal. Like she describes that, the person isn't going to necessarily like scream or be like, or like punch the person in the face or whatever, or like scratch their eyes out. They'll be like, no, I don't want this. Like, please stop. Like, it's going to be a bit more subtle in reality, because this is someone that they know, and it's really confusing.
And then especially if you're embarrassed,
it's really confronting. Like, it's really confronting too. Like, you want to like this person, they're doing this, you're not sure. Like, it can be overwhelming. Like, that's what is kind of being described. Yeah. Okay, so in the article, and this is like kind of like where I was like comparing, it's like in the article titled "There is no safe word," Lila Shapiro details the account of Scarlett Pavlovich. Gaiman asked her to sit on his lap. Pavlovich stammered out a few sentences. She was gay. She'd never had sex. She had been sexually abused by a 45-year-old man when she was 15. So she was like saying things like to try and like, ooh, I don't want this, like, ooh, stop. But as I said, it's not like, no, do not touch me. Like, it's not like that. It's like she's trying to put some distance between them. She's trying to say, no, I don't want it. And the reason why, she's giving this reason. She's saying she's gay. She'd never had sex, like saying these different things. But Gaiman continued to press. The next part is really amorphous, Pavlovich tells me. But I can tell you that he put his fingers straight into my ass and tried to put his penis in my ass. And I said, no, no. Then he tried to rub his penis between my breasts, and I said no as well. Then he asked if he could come on my face, and I said no, but he did anyway. He said, call me master, and I'll come. I've put that in there because there's some similarities here. It's like the person is known to the person, and it's not to be like, I'm not trying to compare, two stories that are obviously very traumatic. I'm just trying in the context of like where the consent, because both men, both Neil Gaiman and Danny Masterson have denied that that the consent was absent. And in specifically, this was Jane Doe 2's story that I was describing earlier, but her account, her testimony. But in regards to Jane Doe 1, there is a record of him saying, basically describing the same acts and event that she describes, except for when he tells it, he doesn't acknowledge that there was no consent there. Like, do you get what I'm saying? I guess that's what I'm trying to get to.
I totally get it.
Right.
Yeah. And and I think that I don't know what training or where on the bridge Danny Masterson was, if he was training as an auditor or whatever, but Neil Gaiman certainly was, and I think he got up to class 8 auditor, and it's that exposure to abuse of power,
Right. So Danny Masterson got up to grade 2, which is on like the receiving counseling processing side, like receiving the techniques on himself, grade 2. However, there's a course called the TRs and Objectives, which is on that side. So just so everyone knows, like this bridge, which has all these steps to like whatever that Hubbard created, one side is training and the other side is processing. And processing means like the actions that you're receiving on yourself, basically, towards your like so-called enlightenment or whatever. Danny Masterson had done grade 2, and so like Neil Gaiman at 7 years old had done grade 1. See where that is? That's on that side. And however, before you get there, you do a thing called TRs and Objectives co-audit, which is basically 2 people doing these practices on each other. And part of that course is that you do all the training. You learn these training drills that I just described before of this exact control, or like practicing controlling and manipulating a person by your tone of voice and by like subtly moving them or smoothly guiding them, I think is how they framed it. Yeah. So, So what I put here. Yeah, so what I put here is Masterson, Gaiman, and Haggis were trained in Scientology to ignore forms of refusal and to override these objections with their own will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's that abuse of power and being taught that, I don't know, it's just a distorted view on the, pardon the pun, the dynamics of,
right,
like interpersonal, in like kind of how it's supposed to be. So I can't think of the words. So
yeah, oh good. Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And so like
normalizing
the training that. Right, yes.
Yeah, normalizing the abuse of authority, and then like desensitizing someone as well to the emotional harm that these things that it causes being like that. And if that makes sense. Sorry, my stupid.
Yeah. No, that's totally fine. So I wanted to show you, so basically the 5th article that I write is basically this idea of like, okay, so as we've gone over this like incredibly destructive childhood that Neil Gaiman experienced, but then what effect does that have on an adult who was violated repeatedly? And like you said, like I liked what you said, like normalizing this distorted level of like power or control over another person. Then how do you recognize that? Do you know what I mean? Like, and then I thought it was interesting as well because I came across this video, which is of this some people who had left, particularly this one couple, but who had left the Gloriavale cult in New Zealand. Amanda Beaumont, you're probably familiar being in New Zealand, but yeah, Gloriavale, and they talk about consent in this, and I just thought it was really relevant to the story, and that's really where I'm going to finish up, and then we'll get to comments after that. So I just wanted to play this one for you.
And why is it hurtful? because I know people are still getting hurt.
To escape the hurt, you leave Gloriavale for somewhere almost as remote. Beginning a new life, maybe here, in the jagged emptiness of inland North Canterbury. Down there, the disciple family, who left late last year, are starting to heal. Hopeful and Victory Disciple have 7 children, loved to the sky and back. They fled Gloriavale to keep them safe, to give them a childhood, to free them from the weight of that place.
I think every parent in Gloriavale needs to seriously consider what are they allowing to happen to their children.
Is this a safe place for children?
No. I mean, to me, we all have children in there, and we had our children there because we believed it was the best place for them. And then when we saw it damaging our children the same way we were damaged, it just really hurt.
So they were raised in it as children, and then had their own kids, and they were like, okay, we don't want the same, and they could already see those same damages were happening to their own children, and they were like, okay, that's it, like, we need to get out of here. And it was just it's just heartbreaking. Like, I can see the pain of, like, of course that's the last thing that you would want. Like, I don't know, it's like, yeah, it's just hard because when does it end? And, like, how many children need to be abused by these people in these systems, like, for these false beliefs, or not necessarily false beliefs, but like harmful beliefs and practices that they're doing. Like, it's absolutely awful. But there's a particular belief that the Gloriavale cult have that is particularly harmful, and that's what I wanted to show you guys, so we're going to get to that.
The hurt began with this man, Neville Cooper, Gloriavale's leader for nearly 50 years, who in the mid-90s was jailed for sexual offending. At about the same time, Gloriavale moved here, 60k inland from Greymouth, out of sight of the world, where it was governed with an all-controlling manifesto called What We Believe. What We Believe tells the people of Gloriavale they must obey the leaders and submit themselves willingly to them as unto the Lord. So, Gloriavale's leaders are equal to God, and so too are husbands, to whom wives must submit themselves as unto the Lord and obey them in all things. Which leads us to an extraordinary command, and this is verbatim. Husbands and wives do not have the right to withhold themselves sexually from one another. Did you understand you could say no?
No, we were taught we could never say no.
And it actually goes further now. I know it does mention husband and wife, but most of the teaching and most of the way, the whole vibe we got from Hopeful was that the wife is not allowed to say no to the husband.
Mm-hmm. You know, your job as a wife is to make sure your husband's never going to have an excuse to be unfaithful. And so you have to give them everything, anywhere, anytime. That's it.
And did you believe, Victory, that that was how life was?
Yeah.
That was publicly taught. No one sort of knew or understood the way a healthy relationship should be. And yeah.
So that's another child survivor. Like, I feel emotional because it's like, it's hard, you know, like,
yeah,
it's hard that, you know, this is the work that we have to do, but it's hard because you've lived it, like leaving something that was your foundation, like that was your earliest learning, that was your it was the structure that you grew up in. And I know that this is probably like quite relatable for a lot of people. Is like, in a lot of ways, people have to travel out through that experience themselves, like whether that's within the context of their family that holds, you know, who does abusive actions, or holds, you know, beliefs that are, you know, enacting those beliefs out is harmful to other people, to children. And so like I understand that can be like relatable in a lot of different contexts. But
yeah,
it's hard because it's like the challenge is like, how do you make a change? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these survivors, you know, they experienced it themselves as children. They come out of it and now they're talking about it. What they're really describing is that this text basically allows for or encourages sexual assault on partner assault, and there is more to this that I wanted to show you. But was there anything that you wanted to add at this stage, T?
Just, you know, unfortunately, it's quite, you know, there are a lot of faiths that do believe that the woman is supposed to be, you know, submissive and put out whenever the man wants it, and it's not okay, and it is heartbreaking to see people think that that's all right, you know. And I am to you as well, though. I really take my hat off to you, and incredibly thankful that you're able to sit here and talk about this. You know, you're so incredibly brave, you know, and you're doing an important thing, a massively important thing, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, I think. Well, I appreciate that, T. And you know, this is why this story, again, it really gripped me. This story of this, like this, just the horror of like this 5 to 7 year old child in Neil Gaiman's story of experiencing these. I just like how do you become normal? Like, I know it's taken me so many years to figure out a lot of shit in my head, you know. But even I did not experience the brutality, like, at such an early age of this, like, just relentless, being in the home of, I mean, I had it differently. Like, I was placed inside an organization, you know, separated from my parents, but there is something about this child's story that really gripped me, of this horror. Yeah. So yeah. Keep going with this. Yeah.
We really only started understanding it after coming out.
Oh, that's nice.
Faithful, his wife, and their 8 children have been out for just over a year. Gloria Vale was breaking him.
I know that people in there will disagree with me, but there are so many abusive marriages, and we don't even know that they're abusive.
I really cared for her, and yet the mindset that I'd grown up with meant for the first 8 years of our marriage, I hurt her more than anyone else. And that's what I want to get across to the people in Gloria Vale.
So this part of the story, like, just really struck me too, because he said he really cared for her, but for the first 8 years of their marriage, he was hurting her, and he didn't realize it. Like, he didn't, because for him, it was normal. For him, that was his right to dominate his wife, and it didn't matter if she didn't want it, anywhere, anytime. Like, that was his prerogative, that was his right, and he didn't realize that that was wrong. And the person who was speaking before that, the survivor that was talking before that, said that they've only just started to figure things out since they left, and they'd only been out like just over a year, or I think these ones have been out these people had been out for just over a year or whatever. But like, so it's very recent that they've come out and they're starting to learn like, oh, that's not actually okay. But the mindset that is instilled in them from children made them, you know, only be aware of that as being the right thing and not being able to question anything. Yeah.
The husbands in Gloriavale, they can be hurting their wives without even realizing it because of that culture we've grown up with, that unhealthy sexual culture.
So where does this leave women in Gloriavale in terms of their ability to consent or not?
Doesn't exist. It's not a word that exists in Gloriavale, not a concept. You have no right.
You have no...
Okay, so, yeah.
Yeah.
That was that.
Yes. So it's wild. It's just wild to think that people grow up like that, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think he felt in his gut at the time that it, well, he can't, like, that it was wrong, but obviously if he was doing it for 8 years, then
so
no,
it seems right. It seems as though what they're saying is that they didn't realize what they were doing was harmful. These two men harming their wives, sexually assaulting their wives, and not realizing that this was wrong or bad, or you know what I mean. And like, and that's where I wonder, like, if you've been violated repeatedly at such an early age, and like your view of reality is so just fucked up because you were like being, you know, having pushed back into these early memories of being in the womb and being in other lifetimes and growing up on these stories of like this person raped that person. It's like, it's just so, you know, in a previous lifetime and like, it's just like, and I know a sense of what that's like because obviously I experienced that, but it seems to me as though Neil Gaiman at an earlier age than I did, and experienced it in a much more extreme way, like where it was repeated and repeated. Like, I didn't start experiencing Scientology really until like 7 to 8 years old. He started experiencing it at 5 years old. So there is a big difference developmentally, even with that type of gap. And so I just believe that what he experienced was so extensive and so psychologically violent. I just don't know how does a child like that survive into healthy adulthood, and is what we've seen about Neil Gaiman a representation of what that type of harm, you know, what it resulted in.
And I think that a lot of it is shown in his writings, perhaps, you know, like there's a lot of I don't know, like, so I did write notes on it as well. So like Gaiman noticed that adults who wrote children's books seem to have forgotten what it was like to be a child. I'm not sure what, I don't know why I wrote that actually, sorry. And he told himself that I have to be one of the ones that remembers. And this is a recurring theme in his writings. And he writes quite dark and depressing literature for children. In 1987, he wrote a graphic novel called Violent Cases, which depicts a grown man's childhood recollections, sorry, with a visit to an elderly doctor at the starting point of those memories. And while treating the 4-year-old child for a broken arm, the doctor shares vivid stories from decades earlier. And Neil actually talks about, I can't remember which article it was, he talks about a time when he was younger where his dad had been trying to get him up the stairs and he pulled his arm so hard that it came out of the socket, you know, and it made me wonder that some of this violence from his dad inspired some of his writings. I don't think, you know, I think there's a lot of different influences in Neil's life, from the Scientology, the coldness of his parents, and that they, you know, all of this Scientology programming was not, it was going on in the household. That was It's a very kind of, I imagine it to be quite a cold, emotionless relationship with his parents. And what else did I put? Sorry.
It does seem to be the case, and T, I agree. There does seem that there was physical abuse by the father. There's also, and now I haven't read the book, The Ocean at the End of the Lane, but I've read about the book, and there is a scene in there where there's an attempted drowning of him in the bathtub, and it seems, and then there was some other there seemed to be some kind of crossover with his actual childhood of actual real events that happened, something along those lines. And then there's also in that book as well, apparently, is a scene with the father is having a sexual relationship with the nanny, the child's nanny, and also, I mean, that is kind of what we also saw in the article too, but we also know that David Gaiman was declared a suppressive person later on in Scientology, with the takeover of David Miscavige and the getting rid of the Guardian's office, and basically, David Gaiman, he was someone who had amassed a great deal of power, particularly in England, but and so he was ousted, but in his declare order, where he was declared a suppressive person, it says that he had engaged in sexual misconduct. So there was sexual misconduct allegations about Neil Gaiman's father, David Gaiman. And so you sort of wonder about that too. So I think there's really a cluster of all kinds of things that were going on in Neil Gaiman's childhood.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think as well, another one of the things that we haven't touched on, which would affect people growing up in Scientology and also joining at a later date, is that kind of God complex that's kind of put onto you, that you feel like you're this special being, and you know what I mean? Again, it's boundaries, and having this sense of overinflated kind of importance, and that you're immortal and you're a spiritual being and you're a fallen god and all of this, and you're going to come back
and also that you have and also that you have magical powers, and what I understand from his books is that's it's fantasy, it's kind of sci-fi, but it's also people having different powers and that sort of thing, and that's also in the book The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and there is there's some magical powers in there, and so definitely thinking that you have the ability in this lifetime, but beyond this this body, and beyond this realm, but actually in other realms of existence, to have these, and that you'll never die. That's the other thing. And, that's something that people who were in Scientology, they then have to deal with after they leave Scientology, because they never prepared to die. So you thought the whole time you believed in it, you believed that you were immortal, and that you were just going to pick up body after body after body. And when you're faced with that concept of oh, this could be it, this body dies and that's it. And now I don't know for sure what happens, but I think that is the reality. And so it's a hard thing to.
And I know David Gaiman was in it until he died, and he actually died, I think, four days before their 50th wedding anniversary to his wife. And
oh wow.
Yeah, and they own a massive vitamin company in the UK.
That's right.
So that's another Scientology business to look out for. They actually supply all the niacin and stuff for all the bloody narcanons and that, So I think they were the top. That's another thing as well that would have contributed to it, is that they had celebrity status
because they did the vitamins for Narcanon. Okay, that
makes exactly.
sense.
Yeah,
okay,
and celebrity status.
Okay, sorry. Let me just say this. part of the Narconon program, and I'm not super familiar with Narconon, but I do know that they do the people going through that treatment program, whatever, they will do the purification rundown as part of their treatment, and that's you go in the sauna, you sweat it out, da da da. But part of that regimen is that every day you have to take a whole bunch of vitamins. One of them is niacin, and these vitamins actually increase day to day. You increase the amount of niacin, and you're supposed to take these vitamins to like supplement. You also take like oil and lecithin, which is this like really weird mixture. I've done the Purif at least twice. Yeah, definitely done the Purif twice, but that was in Australia. That's a whole nother story. But so that's interesting. So that makes sense that they were like supplying vitamins to Narconon. That makes sense to me.
And they were actually, I think so. Hang on, I'm just trying to find out the name. If Philip wanted to know, G&G vitamins. I thought it was G&B. Yeah. G&G vitamins. And David was actually, David and Neil actually. David was the ED at Birmingham Morgue for some time. And I have a friend that used to. I have a friend that used to go to Birmingham Morgue, and they said that David was really creepy and like a lot of sexual innuendos and, you know, lack of boundaries. And a lot of people, he gave everyone the creeps. He had that kind of creepy vibe, pervy kind of vibe about him, but they couldn't say anything and had to keep the TRs in and stuff because they had celebrity status. They were actually the biggest fundraisers for Birmingham Morgue. And David would have, you know, he went on from the Guardian's office to work with David Miscavige, he did some work for David Miscavige, and when Miscavige would come over for the IAS result, the IAS event in East Grinstead, David would go out for dinner with, David and David. David would go out.
So I think, so you are right in saying that Neil and David Gaiman, they were declared suppressive persons, but then they were reinstated, and often there was like an amnesty issued, or you could also just go through your A to E steps, which is like the steps you have to do to become not a suppressive person. So that makes a lot of sense that they continue being involved. And I know that the family, even there are, I think his sister is still involved in Scientology today as well. The family,
his mom, his ex-wife, his sister. I think he had. I've got all the info because I was actually, if anyone's interested, I'll still do it. I was going to do a stream about all of the history and his family and all of that because I've got quite a lot of information about it. There's a lot of connections, especially in the UK. They're a huge family in the UK. They're very, very hardcore Scientologists. Yeah, his auntie and everything. You know, Nasty Nathaniel, the one that does audit, like First Amendment audits. He actually he went to St. Hill just outside the entrance, and Neil Gaiman's auntie drove out, and he had a conversation with her and everything, and saying, "Oh, are you clear?" And she went, "Oh, I was clear a long time ago." You know, and they're all massive donors. Sure. You know, So there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So when we say that Neil Gaiman's family were our Scientologists, like we're talking about among the most extreme, among the most dedicated, like working in the Guardian's office, avoiding being sentenced to prison, but people that you worked with actually literally going to prison. Like this is hardcore. Yeah, just dedication. They were doing these practices on their children from the earliest ages, from that early Dianetics era and onwards. Like, it's just wild. Yeah.
And his sister actually, she owns or runs a life improvement center in East Grinstead as well, and you know, gets kids in and does all that, you know, auditing and stuff there, and applies scholastics and stuff. So there's a lot of activity from that family in the UK. And I think what happened, I think they both got declared. I don't know why. David got back, but I think Neil, maybe he stayed out. But then it's unclear because he did marry his wife around that time, I think, and she was
right.
a Scientologist.
I think they both got back in. Yeah, so he would have. They both would have, because we know that because he was.
Oh no, yeah, no, you're right.
After that, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there was.
All right, so Melody.
Yeah.
Melody Hedrick, Portland SP supporter. Oh, no, I would love that, T. I would definitely love that, and let us know when you're gonna do that.
A different thingy on it, you know, less confronting, I guess. Like just if anyone's interested, because I just geek out on stuff like that, you know, trying to find info.
I love it. So Perth Scientology audit, you guys can go there. And she's going to cover all that information. I think it's great. It's good. It provides a lot of context. So I think that's important. Okay, Melody Hedrick, Portland SP supporter, said Neil Gaiman is a scary man. I bet his father was a monster that helped Neil, a worst monster. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that sounds like it.
Possible. Yeah.
Decipher. Can you just? Sorry, I just need to say, Decipher. If you're here and you're really pissed as a fart, might not be the right kind of vibe, dude. You know, like talking about some serious stuff going on here, and lard like irrelevantness. I don't know. His name definitely. His name Decipher suits him. I never know what he's on about. But yeah, anyway.
I'm just reading through these comments. Sorry.
Yeah. I do feel for all the
if you are drunk, it's probably not. Yeah,
it's always drunk. That's just him. Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Just be
I don't know. I don't know if I.
He's one of my regulars. That sounds bad. What was I saying? Yeah, because you're distracting. I just wanted to, like, I do feel for all the Neil Gaiman fans. You know, he had a lot of beloved fans that really, really loved his writings and would have grown up with them and stuff. And, you know, I imagine some people might feel some guilt for doing that, but it's not your fault. And, you know, we weren't to know. And, yeah, it's hard to separate the art from the artist. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to miss Neil as I thought he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, let me say this. I'm sure that's hard, but like the reality is we have to, it's like,
we have to call it out.
We just have to accept that, yeah, right, exactly. And we have to accept that is the reality of like humanity, is like, you can never don a silver coat over somebody and just assume that they are like good and whole and whatever. I mean, I think that now I haven't read his books, but as I understand it, there are, you know, there's some dark topics. I don't know. I think there's art and then there's the artist, but it's something that we have to, as a society, like just, I don't know, come to deal with, because it just is what it is. Yeah.
And it's, you know, at the end of the day, I think, you know, so obviously there's a growing up in a cult, his lack of, you know, those childhood, what's it called? You know, the emotional needs as a child weren't met.
Right.
I think he stated that he's autistic as well.
Okay. Did he say that?
All of these different things that come.
Yeah, that would make it more challenging.
But at the end of the day, you know, if a woman's saying no, you know what no is, and you know what right and wrong is. Surely, you know. I mean, what do you think of from a Scientology environment? Is it possible, as an adult, from growing up to an adult, is it possible that you wouldn't know? I mean, you know what rape is, surely.
Okay, so let me say this. So I was born and raised in Scientology.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, you've got to be a certain type of person to, there's no excuse.
Right,
think.
So let me say this. Right. No, there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse. And I don't mean for any of this to be even like conveyed in that way at all. Like that was never the intention, but it was more to okay, this is an opportunity to highlight the damages that can be done to children and that are still being done. Now, as a child who grew up in this, and also I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse that was extensive, and it occurred over a number of years, from the earliest from 3 years old that I experienced. And so, you know, that having experienced abuse does not mean that you're going to become an abuser at all by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that history and, you know, psychology research has shown that the people who do abuse people tend to have abuse in their background. So what I'm saying that is, like, not to create a rule of like, oh, 1 + 1 = 2, but it's more like, yeah. So if you experience abuse, does not mean that you are going to abuse other people. And I, you know, I didn't come out of Scientology just like going around like raping people. Do you know what I mean? So it's one isn't kind of like, you know, one doesn't follow from the other. But I'm just trying to say that, like, there's no denying the fact of like how depraved and abusive and violating his childhood was, which was more violating, I believe, than the childhood that I experienced. I'm sure that has got to have some kind of effect.
Like a contributing factor, but not the reason, you know, because I mean, I know like maybe another weird analogy, but most people that are drug addicts or alcoholics or whatever have been through some type of trauma. I've been through extreme trauma for decades, and I've never become addicted to drugs. I've never gone down that path or felt the need to go down that path. So I think it's a lot more complex. It's not as black and white as, oh well, Scientology made this person like this, or, you know, I think it's quite it can be quite harmful to be throwing around things like saying that someone definitively has narcissistic personality disorder, or they did it because of this or that. It's a lot more complex than that. Very, very complex. There's a lot of different factors that go into it, you know.
I really agree with that, T. Like, we're not psychologists, we're not medically trained, or like we're not in a position to diagnose. Yeah, but what we're doing is like,
these things would definitely, I think, contribute to it. Yeah, you know,
right?
But it depends on the person's brain, doesn't it? You know, because some people might.
I was about to say that it's their biology as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you're like a natural, if you're just a nasty person, sometimes people are just a fucking nasty person, you know, and they'll use it as an excuse, or they'll feed off that and they'll love it, and it'll feed that nastiness. Whereas other people, it could come down to loads of different things. It could come down to intelligence of challenging views and looking at things from different perspectives and educating yourself, having, you know, so there's so many different types of brains and personalities and stuff. So it's never as simple as, well, this happened to them, so that's why they're like this.
And also I think as well, just like having the position of power, because Neil Gaiman's family obviously were in a position of power. That was all he knew. All he knew was his family being powerful in this world, right? And so if that's all you know, I mean, we could really kind of relate that to other positions of power. It doesn't have to be necessarily Scientology. It can be other circumstances. And we do find that, like, in, you know, Hollywood celebrity realm of, like, you know, the just of never being told, you know, definitively no. Like, when you do have that kind of power where you can override people, like, so I think there's a ton thing. I love that you said that, T, because I think there's a ton of compounding factors there, and this just happened to be like sort of one aspect of it that I wanted to highlight. But absolutely, there's so many things going on. Mad Drop Bear asked a question. He said to me, did you ever see any parents have any disagreement or concern about their children in Scientology? And my answer is, I never ever saw that. And I was there in the core of it, born into it until 17 years old, like in the sort of inner core. Excuse me. And then later on, still being a Scientologist, I never saw that.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. I can't remember who was saying it. I think it might have been Jamie, actually, when he was on with you. And he was who were you talking to? Or maybe it was, I don't know. And he was saying, like, so you were there in LA when the kids were living in poverty, and you'd walk past and you'd see them like that, and you never felt it was wrong, or you never said anything, and it was because it was for the greatest dynamics or whatever, it's that brainwashing that.
I think that was the interview that he had, or the discussion that he had on Miriam's channel on Scientology Up North with Robert Dam.
That's right, yeah. I knew it was
the
Miriam.
Author Robert Dam. Yeah, you got that right. The author Robert Dam. Yeah, he asked him that. That was really, and it's so true. And like, I didn't see anyone. I never saw any adults question it. That was never around. Like, I was never around that. I didn't, and even, you know, even just being like just a Scientologist, like a public Scientologist, as like a young adult, like after I'd left like working for the core of it, I didn't see anyone objecting, like any parents objecting. No, they would all bring their kids, and
they don't get it.
That was like celebrated. Yeah.
They truly believe this stuff, and it's scary. It's when I've been out protesting, or I've spoken to people, like, because I try and speak to people and say to like how do you think this is okay, and they just sort of laugh it off, like, well, why wouldn't it be okay? It is it's terrible.
Because there's no empathy. That's one of the things that the Hubbard techniques does, is it erodes your empathy away. So the longer you're there and the more you're absorbing of it, the more dead inside you become. So again, that's where I'm like, okay, does this have something to do with it? Because if you can't even feel it, like, you don't have a sense of boundaries. Like, boundaries is a feeling. It's actually, you need to be tapped into your like biological, physiological environment, your system, because that is the alert system. That's the thing that tells you, like, no, this is not okay. Someone who's so actually that's a very interesting point. Actually, it's a very interesting point. So one of the results of having been experience a childhood of abuse, including sexual abuse, one of the results of that was that I didn't have a sense of boundaries for myself. I didn't feel that feeling of when, like, my boundaries are being violated. Like, that all felt normal to me. So when you have a strong boundary system, a healthy boundary system in place, you're going to be able to be alerted to danger, or to be able to, like, react to danger. Someone who has been abused is just not going to feel that as much. So so that is my experience. And then also, like, impacts on, like, my emotions and all that sort of thing, and not being able to feel emotions. So all that numbing, and that was more the effect that I experienced, like the desensitization, the disconnecting from my own body, the numbing, the lack of emotional response, and all that sort of thing.
That's one thing that you always say, is disconnecting the brain from the body. I can't remember how you put it, but you put it very well. It's and even I mean, I wasn't,
as we're talking about, sorry, I didn't mean to
interrupt. No, it's all right, you go.
I just thought, so one of the things that helped me immensely was that I got a treatment in early last year, so nearly a year ago now. I think it was April last year. I got a treatment which was to help me with I was experiencing post-traumatic stress, and, like, in relation to the sexual abuse I had experienced as a child. And I received this treatment because people in this community, felt sorry for me, but that's not what I mean. Like, they wanted to help me. And I'm really grateful for that. And one thing that, like, with my experience with that treatment was that it wasn't, like, instantaneous. Like, it wasn't like I got the shot and then, like, bang. What was really, really cool to experience was that the relief that I got and the improvement in my body and in my brain function happened, and my emotional, like in my heart, you know, like that emotional center, all of that, and like my nervous system, all of that was improved over the last year. And I'll tell you about something in a sec that sort of like represents that. But I just wanted to say, T, I know that you're looking to get that treatment. I am,
yes. Yeah.
Put the funds together for you. So I just wanted to share that with everybody.
Oh, thanks,
and
Miriam. If anyone wants to see my story, I do have my story on my channel. I did a couple of, it took 2 rounds, 2 shows with Mental Health Matters. I'll put the link in for Mental Health Matters there. An amazing channel that advocates and supports people who have been through trauma. Like you say, this community is incredible. I've been isolating for the last almost 4 years now, and it's been my lifeline. I've made so many friends, and you know, unconditional love of being accepted as you are. You're not a weirdo, and you can talk about your trauma, and you're not, you know, you just, I don't know, people just get it, you know. There is a 45-second delay. I knew it. Sorry, I'm looking squirrel. But yeah, it's
no.
I knew it.
Sorry,
that's
guys.
why I keep interrupting you. Sorry. I wait till you take a breath and then I go, bah, but it's not coming out like that for you.
Oh no. Well, I'm sorry, guys. Hopefully that will. Hopefully we're not talking over each other too much. But I wanted to say to you that yeah. Anyways, but I wanted to be able to help you. Yeah, I want to help you to be able to you know, have whatever experience that you may have with this. And I just wanted to say that, like, everyone's experience is different. But one thing that really represented to me of, like, the difference that it made in me, and I have so many examples of it over the past, like, nearly 1 year since I got it. But I recently went to watch a stage show, a musical, which, with my daughter. And it was for her birthday. It was a special thing that I bought tickets for her and I to go. And when we were watching it, which was Billy Elliot, and I loved the movie. And so
awesome.
when we were watching it, it was like such an incredible show. I was crying. Like, I had tears streaming down my face. Like, I would go from like crying to laughing or whatever. But I was like, oh my gosh, like, that experience of crying in the moment, I've only really been able to do, like, apart from like really panicked, like almost hysterical crying in the moment, I have only been able to do that since having gotten this treatment. And like,
that's amazing.
Another example, so just being so moved by art that I literally cried, like, but because of the emotion that was being portrayed in this show, it was just like so incredible. So that to me really represented in a big way, like, how far I'd come and the improvement that it had made in me and my brain body function and my ability to experience emotion. Really, that's been the relief to my ability to experience emotion, and having that block removed has been the unexpected but most needed outcome of this treatment for me personally. And as I said, and it's different for everybody. So,
and isn't it funny how, like, you're crying at something sad, but it would have like, I'm imagining it would be such a happy event to be able to sort of feel that properly, you know. And
that's exactly right. That's exactly
myself.
Right.
I'm very numb. I'm numb to a lot of emotion. I don't. I struggle with boundaries, communication with people. I can come across as quite blunt, and I struggle. I struggle to face the things that I need to do. I have extreme avoidance, and it affects my what do you call it? executive function, my parenting, everything. And I've reached a standstill with my therapy. It's just not doing anything at the moment. I don't have the capacity. Like they say, your amygdala. I can never say that word. Amygdala.
Yes.
I think it's amygdala. Just fuzziness. Like I can't sit and read a book.
So I'm just trying to
I can't sit and read a book. You know.
Is this the link? It looks very long. I've just popped that in there.
Oh, I've got it in the private chat.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let me grab it from there.
Get my face off there. That's my beautiful boy.
Oh, I see. Private.
My beautiful boy.
Copy.
Yeah.
Copy link.
What was I going to say? I can't remember what I was going to say now, but yeah.
I interrupted you, and I apologize. That's my bad.
It's all right. We're allowed. It's a delay. But yeah, I just want to be able to function properly. And you know, I'm 40. I'm in my 40s, and I can't study. I can't. I work for myself so that I'm on my own. You know. Yeah, I just want to be the best version of myself, mainly for my son. But I'd love to go. I'd love to go back to educate. I'd love to go to education to get educated to. Yeah, get rid of the sense of impending doom all the time. Like earlier before I came on, like 2 hours before I came on, I was so anxious, probably because my car won't start. Something's wrong with my car. But, you know, my poor son is growing up watching this, you know, panic attacks. And I was having dreams about my dad last night. So I think that's starting to process as well. But yeah, it would just be nice to sort me noggin out, you know. Yeah, there's hope. And Miriam, how you've given me a lot of hope, not just with the seeing you how you've been affected with the shots, but also your what's the right word, tenacity, like your strength and going, you know, not giving up on your case and everything, or your 2 cases. And you know, I'm still pursuing my case. I missed the deadline to send evidence, but I'm going to get back onto it. That's what I mean. I'm doing stuff like that. I was supposed to send evidence to the police, and I don't know why. I just avoid things, you know. It's like this overwhelm and this fuzziness in my brain where everything's too hard. It's that fight or flight constantly. It's, I guess, paralyzing, you know. And then I don't do anything. It's
a trauma response.
Yeah, incredibly frustrating. And then obviously the shame after that, and thinking that I'm the worst person in the world and all of this, you know. So that's my daily circle of thoughts, you know. But yeah, I will get there. Yeah, I will, Mad. I'm determined. I'm going to get there, and come hell or high water, I'm going to get these blimmin' shots. Yeah. I've got a little bit of work at a school. When school goes back, I've got a little bit of work, so I should be able to, because I'm in pain as well, and I don't know if it's the trauma, but I have a lot of my shoulders are always tensed. You know, I tried to get a massage about 10 years ago, and they said you're going to need like 10 sessions. Can't do anything with you. You're solid, you know.
So
I literally just did 3 days in a row. I did like 3 days in a row of like cleaning, and it's killed me. I had to lie in bed for the day afterwards, you know.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I had said to Jamie last year before I got this treatment, I said, I don't know what it is, but there's this thing right behind my neck right here that is really, really like, it's so tense and so painful. And it's just constant, and it doesn't go away. And he goes, yeah, I've heard that's pretty common. And then I haven't had that same issue since I've gotten the treatment. And I'm not saying that that's going to resolve that issue for you. I'm just saying that was my experience. So
but also
there is trauma. God. Okay, well that's perimenopause or whatever.
Yeah,
is it peri or is it
peri? Peri, yeah, it's perimenopause. Okay. So I'm perimenopausal, everyone, and I'm a massive oversharer, by the way, as well. I think that's the trauma thing too. Like everyone, I was talking to the bloody gardener at the school, and he's going, and I end up telling him my life story. I'll tell anyone that will listen my life story, and he's going, oh, don't worry, everything you've told me, I'll keep it confidential. I said, mate, everyone knows, you know. Like, and that's I don't know why I do it, you know. Yes, and it's ADHD, and that's the thing, Debbie. ADHD and trauma are very kind of, they have a lot of the same symptoms, and a lot of adults actually get misdiagnosed with ADHD, you know, and it's trauma. So, oh, hey, Miriam, hello.
I know. I was just gonna say, look who's here.
I was going to say something there, and I went off on a tangent.
Oversharing of trauma response, the gardener, and then
before that,
ADHD.
No, I don't know.
Oh, your shoulder, but the tenseness in your shoulder, but your back pain.
I don't know.
Your upper back pain.
I don't know. Yeah, just I'm
trying to get you back there. I'm like,
I was at the school. I was at the school. Yeah, I was working. I was working for the last 3 days, and I was finally listening to The Invisible Machine, right? Jamie's book. Because I've had it. I've had the actual physical book for months, and I just haven't read it. I can't. Not that I can't read. I know how to read and write and everything, but just to sit down and actually focus on a book. I used to be able to do that. I would love to do that. It's the compacted trauma over decades and decades that my brain's just full of this, what's it called? The bloody nerve overgrowth or whatever, right? So I'm listening to Jamie's book, and he's going through how Dr. Lipoff discovers all this stuff and everything. And there was a lady with really severe hot flashes, right? And he said the severity of her hot flashes is that she wears a coat. She doesn't wear a coat in winter. I don't know where she was from. I don't wear a coat in the winter. I'm so like severe. I wake up with wet sheets every morning, and hers went away. And I'm like, oh my God, you know? So yeah, that would be great. It'd be great if that helps.
Well, right. And like, I mean, trauma creates inflammation in the body. So I mean, I can only imagine that, you know, there is a real link there between what we experience in our bodies, for sure. Yeah,
my mumzilla decipher. I'm thermal. Yeah.
Yeah, Debbie S says we are very oversensitive to some things and very undersensitive to others. I can understand that for sure.
Yeah, Kim, I do the jaw clenching as well, but I also I have to remind myself. I'm like this. I have to remind myself, your shoulders are up. Put your shoulders down. All the time. Yeah.
Okay, Miriam says, give me the menopause. I'm done with the PMS.
No, you do not want menopause. It's like PMS all the time. No. Nope.
Really?
Yes.
Shit.
Yeah. And I tried HRT and it made
is what you were saying for.
Yeah.
Kim is not integrated being. California, is that my trauma and anxiety manifests in my chronic jaw clenching. My dentist is helping me to adjust my habit. Okay, yeah. Sorry, it says CA. I assume it's California, but I can
Canada. She's in Canada.
Oh, Canada. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Wow, awesome.
Yeah, Kim I think Kim, you grew up in Scientology, didn't you? Yeah. Been on Jeff's channel. I think I've met you on Jeff's channel. I think I've got this bloody little zip thing there. So.
Okay, Debbie S says, be kind to yourself, T. You need to be the best you. That's not being what you think the world expects of you to be. Yeah, I love that. Brain functions.
Oh no, I don't give a crap.
Stress as we can.
I don't give a crap what the world what the world thinks, because I avoid the world, so it's okay. I don't really care. Mind you, if I didn't care that much, I would have put makeup on and do my hair before I come on here. But I don't know. You have a pride. Hello, Powerlize.
Paralyzed. Thanks for joining us. So good. So great to see you here.
We've been on for nearly 3 hours. We always do this.
Wait, Mad Drop Bear wants to know what's PMS. I was told by my nan that it was putting up with men's shite.
No.
Your nan was wrong. Okay.
Listen, you got to think about it, right? And you know, women, we have periods, pregnancy, childbirth. What's the other one? And menopause. We have it all, and then we go. Yeah. Then we going, oh, stop whinging. You know. So I think we're entitled to whinge.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, is there? I feel like we've covered this to an extent, and we'll, I guess, covered what I was kind of wanting to cover. But guys, if you head over to T's channel, Perth Scientology Audit, subscribe there, because then you'll get the notifications, because she is possibly going to be doing a live to cover more details about Neil Gaiman's life and about his family in Scientology and their role of power and the sort of the positions that they held and how things changed over time. And really, like, you know, it's interesting because David Gaiman was really this huge Scientology player who had just, you know, so much power in the Scientology world from like the 60s to the 70s through the 80s, and then was declared as oppressive person and then came back, whatever timeline that happened at. But yeah, so T will be sharing a ton of information about that, so looking forward to that.
And when school goes back on bloody Wednesday, school goes back, and then I can get into a routine, and I want to get back to doing my regular, because I usually do a show on Fridays, my Voice Down Under. I'm gonna have to move that to Saturdays because I'm being too ambitious. Okay. Yeah, but I want to do like more regular shows, be more organized. I do news from Australia, historical things. I'm going to go through all the different orgs in Australia and research them, and go through the history and any news articles that go along with them. Obviously I've got loads of different projects going on, but please also, can you subscribe to this wonderful lady? Is that way or that way?
Oh, I'm like, yes, who are you talking about?
Sure. Yeah, no, make sure. This lovely, wonderful, amazing lady who's been an incredibly beautiful friend to me, and just an all-round awesome human. I'm trying to get your bloody channel link up. Yeah, please subscribe to Miriam. She's awesome. Hang on, Rage. It's Rage Against the Dark Arts.
The Dark Arts. Yeah, yeah.
Dark Arts. I love that name. The Dark Arts. And yeah, and we do go protesting sometimes, and I have a Facebook group as well. All my links are on my profile. My YouTube channel description. I've got all sorts of stuff on there. I've got cheap memberships, the cheapest I could do. Thanks, Adrian. That's beautiful of you to say that. Thank you. You said you're both amazing women. Well, you're pretty awesome yourself, mate. You're all awesome. Oh, look at you all. No, I love you all so much. I really do. You're my social life and my support, and yeah, you're pretty awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
But yes, I've put your link. Oh, and the Substack as well. Let's put Miriam's Substack in there because she's a beautiful writer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did put it in earlier, but I shall put that in there again. Decipher literally everything you type. I don't understand. He's a wordsmith.
Yeah, so yeah, Decipher came back to just check that everything was all okay, and everything's all good, so nothing to worry about at all. And we appreciate having you here, so thank you so much.
Yeah.
And
no, thank you everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you guys. I think we'll probably just end it there. I appreciate everything. I was looking for if there was any questions in the chat at all, and I don't think there is. So listen, guys, it's been extensive, as always, on my channel. When you come chat with me, we're going to chat for a long time.
Love it.
So thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate everyone and appreciate your support. And yeah, it's great to see some familiar people here and some new friends.
Sorry, there was a question. Sandy Hill, she put up earlier. Have you seen the Senate inquiry into freedom of religion? Did you say it was 2020? I think. I don't know. I know 2021 they tried to go through the.
If Sandy's still here, if she could pop a link.
I don't think that. The inquiry in 2020. Yeah, I think. Oh gosh, I was reading about that the other day. Where they were trying to look into the financials about it. I'll have to look into it again. I'm sorry, my memory is terrible, but I know what you mean. Yes. Remember, it wasn't. So it's
Sandy,
not the.
can you just send me an email with a link? Sandy, can you send me an email with the link to againstthedarkarts@gmail.com? I'd really appreciate it, because I don't know anything about that, and it would be good to have a look into that one.
I think it's
interesting.
Oh, another one. So it's not the financial one, that because they were trying to launch an inquiry into the financial. I think the benefit, whether it benefits the community and all of that stuff. So it's another one. Okay. I don't think I know about that one. Yeah, please send it. Or was it the? Was that didn't? No, the national redress that was done. That was from the bloody
Royal Commission into Sexual Abuse.
Yeah, the Royal Commission. Yeah, when was that? That was
in institutions, 2013 to 2015. I think the findings were issued 2015. The report.
Oh, okay. She's saying they compared Scientology to a cult in the 2000 inquiry.
Oh, fantastic!
Right. Okay. I have to look into that. Definitely.
Okay.
Why do we
interesting.
Not know about that?
Okay.
Why do we not know about this?
What country was that, Sandy? Are we talking about the US? Okay.
Scientology. I'm just having a little, because I'll forget about it. Was it solely about? Hang on a minute.
I love this.
In Australia.
Compared,
okay.
It is a cult.
So it was in Australia. Yeah.
What year?
Oh, freedom 2000 inquiry into freedom of religion, Senate inquiry.
Okay. Well, there was like Senator Xenophon, like from 2010 to 2012, was calling for. He did an address to Parliament or whatever, or Senate. He was a senator.
But this is before
that's right.
that.
He used his parliamentary privilege. Yeah, this is well before that. So.
Oh, is that when there was a probe? There was a probe thing. There was a what was it? I can't remember, but I have briefly heard about that, and I will look into it and maybe send it to you, Miriam, and if you want to, we can cover that together or whatever. I don't know. We can we can figure something out. Yeah, there's so many. There's so much stuff.
So this is true as well. Mad Drop Bear said the Greens also call for an inquiry, which is true. And so nothing much has come of that, but I mean, I hope they keep calling for it.
Do you know? Yeah. Do you know what I was watching earlier, Miriam? I watched the my friend Susan sent me a thing about the opening of the Melbourne org, right? And how there was a lady, an Aboriginal lady there. And she was wondering, is she a Scientologist and stuff? And I watched that opening. I had to watch on a bloody Scientology channel. And I watched the whole thing. It's only I think it's like 17 minutes long, and the speeches and stuff like that, and the mayor and everything, and how the mayor said that he, apparently the mayor said he only went there because he's friends with Kate Serrano and he was doing her a favor as a friend and stuff. And it's like, but that's not good enough. You're the mayor, you know, and you're endorsing a cult, like what the hell? So I was just,
and the way is why, case in point, T, that's like exhibit A, why they go after celebrities is for that exactly, because celebrities, then they can get to the politicians through the celebrities, and that's under this banner called the opinion leaders, and that is the exact, like exhibit A, case in point, is exactly what you're just describing there.
Well, yeah,
and it works. It obviously works.
Yeah, but the thing is, on quite a few of these openings, because then I went down the whole, I was watching loads of openings, and these people that are coming up, I think I watched the New Zealand opening, actually, for Amanda's gone, isn't she? And these people, and they're going on about, they've done this for the community with the drug things and all of that. I think it would be a really good idea to write letters to these people and say, and show the evidence of, actually, the drug work that they've done, the stuff in the booklet is incorrect, because I think it was Jeff did a thing, and he said, I think it was I don't know if it was the UN or something. There's a whole big document going through all the things it's wrong and why, and all of this, like a whole investigation into the drug-free world booklets, and presenting that to them, these individuals, especially the mayor. I don't know if he's still the mayor now, because I think it was 11 No, when did Melbourne Org go? Was it 11 years or 8 years? I don't know. Anyway, I think they're either, and obviously these things, these speeches they're doing
the Ideal Org for...
Yeah, the Melbourne Ideal Org, you know. But obviously their speeches are scripted. You can tell by the language that this is Scientologists has gone up and read this out or whatever. But, I mean, it can't hurt to send these letters, inform them of actually, well, you know, in your speech you've said this, this and this. I know it's a bit late, but better late than never.
100%, yeah.
You know, and maybe if you wanted to share your story as an Australian, you know, and well, actually this happened to me and I believe this is still going on, and you need to be aware and not freaking standing up there and endorsing a cult, you know, as a mayor. Like, fuck off.
Absolutely.
It's not okay. It's not okay. But, yeah. Anyway, sorry, I just needed to get that off my chest because that was pissing me off earlier today.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel you on that one. Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, everybody. No, thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for adding that. It's super interesting, and it is. It's exactly how they work, and so we have to, like, you know, figure out what we can do to combat that. And you know, I think that.
Well, you know, I had that Swedish couple on the other day. Not Swedish, Swiss couple on the other day, and they were saying what they've done. You know, they're contacting all the authorities in every, you know, 26 states in Switzerland, for anyone that doesn't know, which is insane. There are 5 churches of Scientology there, and a population of 7 or 8 million, which is insane. They went to all the different states, you know, the head of the police, to the mayor, all the different authorities, and wrote to them, is this okay? You know, and listing all these things. Is this okay? What can we do about it? What are we allowed to do? What are we not allowed to do? All of these things, you know, and just building that relationship and having that communication with all of these different departments in the different states. I think just doing that is a start, and getting it, people talking about it, and, you know, thinking about it, and I don't know. Yeah, lots of work to do. And I can't write letters. I'm not very good at writing letters. But ChatGPT is my friend.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So, no, we love you. And also, that's one thing that is so great, is that, like, just so many people being involved to think of different ideas, and like, what about if we do this? Could we do this? Or da da da. Like, I know it takes a lot of energy and time and effort, and like, it's you know, it's a lot, but
it's not really Scandinavia. No, sorry, Switzerland isn't Scandinavia. That's Sweden. Sorry. Sweden's Scandinavia. Switzerland's a bit more inland. It's next to. Yeah, that's right, Minna. Yeah, you tell him.
Yeah. All right. Hang on. No. Okay. All right. So yes, let me say goodbye. Love you, T. Thank you so much. Yeah, because otherwise we'll just chat. We'll be here forever. Like, both of each of us. Yeah. Both of us are good at chatting and not good at saying goodbye. All right. See you guys. Bye. Thank you, T, so much. Appreciate it.
Is your email on your page? Sandy says. It's a Rage Against. What's it? Rage Against. Is it Against the Dark Arts?
Yes, it is on my page, I think. Oh, is it? Yeah. No.
It's not Rage Against the Dark Arts. It's Against the Dark Arts. Yeah.
Against the Dark Arts @gmail.com. Yeah. It might not be on my. No, I think it should be. I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah.
Gmail.com. There we go.
Against the Dark Arts.
All right. All right.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Lots of love to everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Bye.